For the lesson on color correction, I have prepared several raw photos. We will need them throughout the lesson, so please download them and practice with me. Before this tutorial, I recommend that you watch my bonus lecture on color and composition. This is a super important theory that will help you act confidently and consciously. It will also help you prepare for filming more consciously. So it will be useful not only for retouchers but also for photographers. If you have already watched these lectures, we can move on to theory and practice in the Photoshop program. The first and most important thing you need to know about color correction is that there are no clear rules and formulas on how to make any color. That is, we will not have such a situation where I tell you, we make a such and such settings, we set such and such numbers, and there will be beauty. No. All photos are different, all photos need their own individual approach. Therefore, I will only have recommendations for you on how to do it exactly not and in which direction you should not move. Otherwise, it should be understood that color correction is a creative and interesting process. And I would like you to feel like artists, and the form of payments, I will give you all the methods and tools. When color grading, you should rely on two things. The first, your visual experience. After all, the way you make a decision at each stage of color correction directly depends on your visual experience, so it's important to work on it and develop it. So, the first is to build on your visual experience. Next, the second point, consider the mood of the photo. I don't recommend making any random color, but I advise you to approach this matter consciously and with an understanding of what settings will emphasize the mood and features of the photo, and also what settings will help highlight the main thing in the frame. That is why I recommend that you start by watching my lectures on color and composition. I remind you of this. And since the color for each photo is adjusted differently, I won't dictate any rules to you at all. I will tell you exactly about all the possibilities of color management in Photoshop and tell you what to look for if you want to wind up a color as on your reference. As a result, you will understand how to make any color you want. Nice plan, isn't it? So, I have prepared some pictures for you to practice. You have them too. You can use them to practice with me. Pay attention to the format of these photos. This is the RAW format. I have a Nikon camera, so I have the letters displayed as NEF. For other cameras, the letters may be different, but this does not change the fact that all these pictures are RAW photos. Why do you need to shoot in RAW format, and why is JPEG format not recommended? In simple words, because working with the RAW format, you are 100% proficient in all the possibilities of color correction and can show the most unexpected deep shades. A RAW photo is not finished, ready to publish image. This is just a file that contains a maximum of information about the frame. Therefore, often such pictures look gray and rather boring when viewed. It is assumed that you must show this file yourself in a special program and determine for yourself what color correction your picture will have. And when you shoot in JPEG, your camera decides for itself what basic color correction to do for your frame. And this color correction will depend less on you and more on the camera manufacturer. As a result, you'll already have a ready-made frame with color correction, and it will no longer be possible to work with deep shades. And now I will show you an example. For it, I have prepared two pictures. This is the RAW format and this is the JPEG format. It's the same picture. And now we will see what makes them different. Let's open the RAW format first. I just drag it into the Photoshop window and I have Camera Raw open. Now I will tell you even more about what it is. But for now, we are looking at what is the difference between RAW and JPEG. Now we see an absolutely black square. The photo was poorly lit, the settings were chosen incorrectly, so in the end, the frame turned out to be black. In fact, since it is shot in RAW format, we can pull out some colors and some shades and see them if we move some settings in the program. And the good thing about RAW is that in it you can control all these settings at a fairly high level and get the result. That is, here we can work with tools for lightening, we can pull out shadows and the picture as a whole will be visible. And we can even maybe do something with it and it will be a good shot. And we can also work, as I said, with colors in the color mixer. We can control the shades, they will even change. This will be noticeable and the range of changes here is quite wide. Precisely because we shot this picture in RAW format and RAW gives us the ability to work deeply with hues and light. What happens when we have a picture shot in JPEG format? Let's open it in Photoshop. First, it will open immediately in Photoshop window and will not open in the Camera Raw window. Here, it immediately opened in JPEG format in the Photoshop window. And if we go into Camera Raw with this picture now, then we'll not be able to do anything with it. That is, I bring exposure to the maximum, some light and some colors are very weakly manifested. I'm trying to do something else and dirt comes out. And this dirt is because we just don't have such a wide range to influence color and light. And here this range is quite small. That is, we have all sorts of pixels and we cannot do anything with colors or anything. That is, we absolutely cannot work with the picture here. We cannot lighten the shadows normally and we cannot do anything. Now you have seen the difference. What is the difference between RAW and JPEG? Let's say it again. RAW allows us to 100% influence the color and light of the frame and work with deep shades. JPEG does not give us this option. As we can see, this frame in this case is initially generally black, so it lends itself to changes very poorly and the picture turns out to be super low quality. Let's move on with you. And since we have to show the pictures ourselves and manage color correction, we will need an additional program. To do this, we will use Camera Raw in this tutorial, and this is not even a program, but an application to Photoshop. That is, the Camera Raw is built into Photoshop. When we try to open a RAW picture in Photoshop, we automatically open Camera Raw. Further, if you want, you can use other programs. In them, the principle of operation will be the same, only the interface will differ. You can learn how to use Camera Raw in this tutorial, but in the future you can also apply all this knowledge to work in Lightroom or Capture One. Only the interface will be different for you. Camera Raw, as I said, is already silently available in Photoshop, and when we open a RAW photo in Photoshop, we already have them automatically opened in Camera Raw. As you can see, this is a window with certain settings. Here we can open all the photos, we can select them here, we can adjust the color for one photo and then apply these settings to all photos. Here it's time to tell you about the sequence in which the processing takes place, and we are moving on to the first stage of processing. There are 5 of them in total and the first stage is action plan. We opened the photo in Camera Raw and before starting processing, we must form some action plan in our head. In other words, we must analyze the photo and understand for ourselves what color correction we want to do, what details to emphasize and highlight, which to remove or hide. If you work with a customer in the field of advertising shooting, then usually the action plan is sent to you by the customer himself. Also, if you are a retoucher, most often you will also have an action plan from the customer. In other cases, you will have to make your own decision about what processing to do and what you should rely on when making these decisions. When you analyze a photo and think about an action plan in your head, you should rely on the mood and styling of the photo. This will help you make the right informed decision about color correction. It is also worth relying on the composition. The composition will help you understand what is the main thing in the frame, what should be emphasized, what should be highlighted with the help of framing or color. It will also help to understand what is superfluous and what should be removed so as not to attract attention. Using these 3 photos as an example, now I want to show you how this mental and action plan usually appears in your head. That is, how we understand what we will do with the photo, and the first stage we will not do anything with photos. Let's say we look at this photo and what do we understand about it? That we will definitely crop it, because here obviously the area of the frame is too large and we need some other things to be the focus of attention due to framing. So, for example, this photo about beauty, about rings, here thanks to this framing more attention is drawn to the area of the rings in the frame. The next point, we understand that the photo is slightly lightish and we will need to make it less overexposed during processing. Bring it to the balance of light and shadow. We also see here such moments that attract too much attention. This is certainly this hair, which is ugly here. We will remove them during processing because they obviously attract too much attention. What else attracts too much attention? These are moments such as, for example, here the color of the hair at the roots differs from the entire shock of hair. So during processing, we will tint the hair at the roots. We will also get rid of this darkening under the eye because obviously it looks bad in the frame. On this stage of processing, we understand that there is superfluous in the frame that doesn't work, and we understand that when retouching we will do something about it. So here we are definitely going to do something with this hair, with this darkening under the eye, with the hairs that are a little bit out here. Because here the hairstyle is smooth and we understand that these hairs are definitely superfluous and we will definitely remove them. The next point, when we figure it out that we will remove the excess, we ask ourselves the question, what is the main thing in the frame that we can emphasize? So, for example, due to the cropping, I have already emphasized the rings on hand. There is already more attention to them than there was before. Previously, it wasn't clear where to look. When we have cropping like this, it becomes clearer. When you study composition, you will understand what I'm talking about. Our rings fall on certain lines where more attention is riveted to them, and it becomes much more interesting for the viewer to travel with his eyes around the frame. And the next question that we ask ourselves here is what is the main thing in the frame and what we'll emphasize and highlight. Yes, we have emphasized the rings, but also when processing we understand that we will probably make them more shiny, more noticeable. The skin will be tinted because obviously it is already painted, but in the photo it is not clearly visible enough, and we will enhance this effect as colored leather. That is, we'll make it more saturated, more densely painted, we'll make the density of the paint higher, we will also enhance this pink color, because obviously it's here for a reason and when processing we can strengthen it, and it will look quite expressive and cool. Further, we will also tint some gaps. Here you can see that the skin is painted, but there are some gaps. This and this part under the eye, but also, for example, this part on the nose is not painted well enough. And in general, we'll make the picture saturated because now it's faded and inexpressive, and it would be great to change that. Reading the general mood of the picture, we understand that the light is harsh, it is so pleasant, sunny. And here absolutely no pastel shades will do. I have some presets here and we can see that no color will work here. This is the main point that you always need to correctly determine at the very beginning of processing, what kind of retouching, color correction we will do. And remember that color correction will not work anyway, that is, it would be a mistake at this stage to try to apply some presets, adjust their settings and then call it your style. As you can see, any color correction will not work here. Color correction is suitable exactly the one that we form in our heads. This will happen precisely because of observation. When you have a well-developed visual experience, you will begin to understand well what needs to be done with the frame. That's why here, as you can see, the picture doesn't look, it's not right, it's not like that, and all because this frame and in general in a frame always needs a certain color correction. Not random, but the one that we picked up individually. And in general, when we take pictures, we should already understand what we want from the frame. Otherwise, if you do color correction somehow by poking, then in general you probably shot the same way. That is, during the shooting, we filmed something incomprehensible and we hope that maybe during processing it will be possible to somehow pull it out. And then, during processing, the same thing begins. Let's see, somehow twist something, maybe something will work out, but as you can see, it does not work. Also, my presets are good, but it does not work here and you should never open the photo and immediately apply the preset. This is a big mistake. Initially, everything is wrong and everything will turn out wrong. I will tell you how to do it. We don't use presets. We don't need to deal with this nonsense. The first thing we do is determine what we are going to do with the photo. Let's move on to the next photo. Here we'll look at it and understand that we will definitely do the framing. We will expand it a little on the sides because obviously it looks too tight and we want to make it more centered, such that again enhance the effect of these hugs, so that they are in the middle of the frame. Then we see here that there is some exposure on the skin and the pants. Of course we will remove it, we will make sure that the texture is visible. We will talk about that later. That when the texture is not visible and objects are highlighted, this is all our exposure and something needs to be done about it. What else are we going to emphasize here? There is hard light here, so no pastel shades will definitely work here. With them, the photo will not look, its potential will not be revealed, it will not be as beautiful as we would like. Therefore, we'll make it more saturated and bright. I want to make the color a little whiter in order to enhance this contrast effect. The smoothness of the hair still looks good here, they are like silk, this resonates well with the texture of the fabric. Therefore, we will also emphasize these, we will draw highlights, remove some unnecessary folds. If we talk about what is superfluous here, these are some extra folds, definitely an extra curve of the girl's back, not very beautiful. Therefore, we will make it more harmonious. Even though both girls are very slim, there are some dark moments on the skin and we will do something with them too. And we will generally change the color of the skin so that it is not so pale, because now it's pale and does not look very good. It's quite gray and faded. We will make a beautiful color photo on a white background from this gray picture. The next photo, and here we understand that initially the photo is about the face, about beauty. Here we will work with the makeup. But initially, if we look at this picture as a raw photo, we see that there is the wrong white balance. The photo is too warm and therefore all the colors do not look natural. That is, the colors look unnatural, so the first thing we will do is to even out the white balance. The photo is dark, so we of course will make it lighter and at the same time get rid of the lights. Now I'm quickly showing you here how the picture is already changing. Further, we see that the photo was taken with soft, gentle light from the windows, so it's very suitable if we don't create some super contrasting, saturated color solutions during processing. It will be good if we retain this tenderness during processing. That is, we will emphasize the youth and beauty of this fresh skin, make the eyes bluer and lighter. We will also remove the superfluous. These are striking moments and everything that definitely does not work in the frame. These are some things on the skin, bumps, spots, dry lips. We will work with all of this. And since this is a beauty shot, we will of course align the light and shadow pattern. And here the girl has freckles, but they are light and they were not very clearly visible. Plus, they were also painted over with makeup. But here you can try to draw these freckles. And I want to tell you right away that of course these photos have already been processed and I can show you what they end up looking like. Remember what I said about the first photo? That will make it more colorful, more expressive. We will paint over these moments on the hair so that they turn out to be a uniform color. We will make pink brighter, green too. We will remove those moments, they are not painted well enough. We will highlight the decorations and this frame as it looks in the end. I did with it what I told you to do. I removed something superflowers from this frame. As you can see, there is not enough hair at hand. I made the photo saturated, colored and painted the skin in a denser saturated shade and emphasized the jewelry. Further, I did not come up with anything supernatural here. See here, there are actually no presets. There is also the most important point, you never need to redraw the frame. That is, he is so sunny, bright, contrasting initially, he has such a mood. Then you don't need to make some kind of tenderness out of it and remake it into muted tones. That is, he initially has the makings of a contrasting, color, beautiful, bright frame, so it turned out in the end like this. That is, if the photo is so cool, contrasting and beautiful and its mood is so tough enough too, you don't need to make boudoir moods out of it. And this shot, we see that in the end it looks like this. As I said, what I think is superflowers here is some folds, I just removed them. I removed some spots on the skin, which also seemed superflowers to me. I slightly corrected the curve of the girl's back so that she looked a little slimmer, because the curve was such that it looked somehow as if there was too much skin. Of course, I corrected the composition and now the girls are in the center of the frame and emphasized the shade of the skirt, the shade of the trousers, made them more saturated and bright. And due to the drawing of highlights, she emphasized the smoothness of the hair, which resonates well with clothes. And again, too, I did not invent anything. There are no contrived colors, there are no presets, I have not fixed it anything much. The frame is good and during processing I just brought the photo to perfection, just gave it a finished look. That is, I did not redraw anything, I did not change anything, I did not change the appearance to anyone, and this is exactly the task of processing, to give the frame a finished look. And with the help of processing, I realized what exactly would give this frame a finished look. Then I did it, and now I got such a frame, colorful, bright and shiny. Let's move on, let's get back to this shot. That's exactly what I was talking about. A soft gentle mood has been preserved here. At the same time, we removed all unnecessary stains from the skin, leveled the light and shadow pattern, added freckles, blush, and now the frame looks gentle. And so we gave it a finished look, that is, again, no presets. Here we look before and after. We made the eyes a little more shiny, softness, the lips, and kept that tenderness that was originally there. We kept the mood of the frame. This is all the tasks of the first stage. We have discussed with you that at the first stage we need to deal with the targeted actions that we will do. It's wrong and completely pointless to do everything you know with the photo. You just need to decide at the first stage specifically what you will do with this particular frame. That is, do not process all photos in one way and do not sculpt one presets for all pictures and call it your style. Don't remove everything from the frame. Sometimes you have to leave something behind, as you have seen. For example, there are some creases here. Have I removed all the folds? No, not all. I removed some folds here, some removed here, but I left some folds. Because if I had removed them all, the photo would have looked different. These folds should be, this is normal for clothes. We must always understand which folds to leave, which to remove, which hairs to leave, which to remove, and due to the rules of composition, we determine what is superfluous in the frame, what directly attracts too much attention, and what needs to be removed. So I will summarize and say that at the first stage we simply decide what exactly we will do with the frame, what is superfluous in it, and what is important and what we will emphasize. What is the mood of the frame and how we will bring it to a finished form. Usually beginners skip this stage, having the habit of just doing what they know with each photo. That is, they try to apply all the familiar tools out of interest. What will happen if you try like this, and what will happen if you try like this, and like this, and like this? Or maybe I will try something like this sometime, but what will happen if you do this? And it turns out that they are looking for some color, but they themselves do not know which one. And such a period probably happens to every beginner, and it's useful because you learn to understand and remember what effect you can get from each tool. But later this period passes and you just understand what color you want before processing and know what tools you need to use to get the desired result. And here I remind you again, in order to reach a level at which you clearly understand what color will need to be done even before the moment of processing, you need to constantly develop your visual experience. Normal practice, for example, when you take a photo in which you like the color and try to understand how it's made and try to repeat it. But here it's important to take into account the light with each photo is taken, the color which you repeat. For example, if your reference is shot when a directional flash and your picture is shot with light from the window, you will not be able to repeat the color. These are completely different shooting conditions, different moods, and you will not be able to draw a brilliant hard flash effect on your soft picture with daylight, and this is important to understand. But if your picture is also shot with hard directional light, then you have every chance that you will be able to repeat the color correction. And in order to know how to repeat color correction from the reference, you need to look separately at each shade and at the balance of light and shadow. For example, here is our reference. The first thing we do is always look at how much the frame is contrasting. That is, how bright the light areas of the frame are, how dark the dark areas are. And secondly, we look at whether there is any shade in the white parts of the photo and in the black ones. That is, if we look at the color white, it always usually has some kind of colors admixture, and we can check it. For example, there is some kind of purple hue, some kind of pinkish. Further, if we look at what happens in black shades, then black is also unclean. For example, here it has a greenish tint. The third point is that we look at the shades of primary colors. For example, red, it's more orange or it goes more to the pink side. Skin color, it's more yellowish or more to goes to the pink side, and in this way we'll look at the details of all shades. There are not very many shades here, but if there was green here, we would look at which green. It's more yellow or more blue, or for example, blue, it's big purple or it's larger again, also closer to green. As you can imagine, in each of these 3 points we change our photo. We will talk about this in more detail a little later. When we look at the reference and can decompose it according to these 3 points and answer the questions, What is our contrast? Do we have any shades in the light and black areas? What shades do we have in the primary colors? And on all these 3 points, we take and repeat this color in our frames. This is how you can repeat the color from the reference that you like. At this point, we finished talking about the first stage, at which we have not yet begun to process photo, but we have understood what result we want to get. The second stage is preparation for retouching. The task of this stage is to prepare the photo for retouching and color correction. The success and speed of processing at the next stages depends on how well we do it. If we prepare the shot well, the further processing will be faster and easier. If we skip this stage or do it poorly, the further processing will be difficult and long. We can spend 3 hours but still end up with nothing. At this stage, I don't recommend using presets and trying to make the final color at once. At this stage, we should not be trying to do a finished color correction at all. So let's talk about what we should do in the preparatory stage of retouching. Put differently, this process can be called developing. As I have already said, we do this in Camera Raw. I remind you that you can also use Capture One or Lightroom. Capture One will be more convenient for selecting and storing images. You can use any of the 3 programs for this stage of processing. The theory of color correction will remain the same. Everything I will talk about the first stage of processing you can apply in any of the 3 programs. The only difference will be in the interfaces. The possibilities and methods of light and color control in these programs are the same. But the next stages of processing we need specifically Photoshop, because we don't do retouching in Lightroom and Capture One, and it's not very convenient to work with individual parts of the image. We continue. At the preparation stage, the first thing we pay attention to is white balance. It's worth leveling it from the very beginning if there are any problems. We have to find the balance where all the elements in the frame will be their real colors. White balance is these 2 scales, temp and tint. And the picture is too yellow now because it's skewed to the warm side. Let's fix it, and here now we are close to the real colors. We don't want the picture to look too blue or too yellow. We are looking for a balance where all the objects are their real colors. Obviously, this trench coat was not that yellow, and neither was the skin, so we are looking for more natural shades. Moving on, here we can immediately understand that the picture looks more blue than it should be. It can be seen by the color of the background. When we have a natural background on the photo, it's immediately noticeable by the contrast with white. You can change the background color of the software here. I like to use white because the contrast with it is the best way to see white balance problems. I look for a balance where the background becomes its natural color without yellow and blue tones. I also keep an eye on the skin tone so that it's natural too. For example, like this. Let's move on. It's a similar story here. There is a warm bias here, but it's not minor. In fact, the picture should be a little bit cooler. There you go. That's the actual colors of this picture. And usually when people ask me how to get the right and beautiful skin tone, I always say you have to start with white balance. Because when you equalize the white balance, the skin becomes its natural shade. Next, you need to work a little bit more with light and shadow and add saturation. And that's it. It's very simple and quick. No complicated manipulations and schemes. After that, there will be other stages of processing where you will do retouching, work with coloring details, and make final color correction. I have now built the white balance myself, but you can do it automatically. There is a white balance tool. Here you need to click on the gray area in the frame. For example, I clicked on the gray jumper with this tool and it worked perfectly. You can use the gray card on your shoot to use the automatic white balance method. This is a great way to get the white balance right if you don't trust your visual or the color reproduction on your device. You need to give the model a gray card to hold. This will allow you to correct the white balance automatically during processing. Imagine it's a gray card. You can just click on the gray and you will get the correct white balance. Then you can copy the white balance settings to all the other photos. Keep in mind that you have changing light temperature conditions on your shoot. You need to give the model the gray card again. Next, at this stage, we work with light and shadows. For this purpose, we have several sliders at once. They are here. We work with them and achieve a balance in which there is no overlighting and failure in the shadows. Note, the higher the contrast, the more noticeable are all the imperfections on the skin, which we would like to hide rather than emphasize. At high contrast, they become quite obvious. With such contrast, the retouching process will be long and complicated. That's why I don't recommend such a high contrast in the first stage. Now I will show you the ideal balance of light and shadow in which retouching will be fast, beautiful and high quality. It's usually enough to lighten the shadows a little bit, lighten the blacks a little bit in the blacks, and a little lighten the light shades and whites. So we can see that we now have a very clear texture and it will be easier to work with. Plus, this photo is quite dark, so let's lighten it up with the exposure tool. I rarely touch the contrast tool and I don't advise you to use it at all. It makes no sense. We can control the contrast with these 4 panels. They affect the balance of light and shadow in the frame, so we can make the light and dark areas deeper or less deep. So now we can see the texture in the darker parts of the frame quite well. At the same time, we have no failure in the shadows. We also have good texture in the light parts of the frame. With these settings, the retouching process will be easy and the result will be qualitative. And now I will tell you about one more reason why you don't need a strong contrast at this stage. When you open a photo in Photoshop after working in Camera Raw, Lightroom or Capture One, this photo will no longer have the properties of a raw file. That is, you will no longer be able to control the deep shades of color as well as light and shadow. And I also want to tell you about what is a failure in the shadows. It's very simple. When we see that in dark areas we do not see texture but just a dark spot, black, gray or brown, it's all a failure in the shadows. If we see that the light areas are devoid of texture and as if scorched and look too saturated, as if burning, this is our exposure. So we lost texture in the light areas. I don't recommend this. It looks wild, messy and poor quality. I suggest putting everything back the way it was. That way this picture looks nice. Plus, this picture was taken with soft light, so it's not really suited to be any kind of hard and contrasty. Since it's originally soft, we need to keep that softness when processing. It will look very organic. Also, there are a lot of warm shades in this photo. The wall, the skin, the clothes, we should keep that warmth in the color correction because it conveys the mood of the shot. There is no need to try make it some kind of cold picture. It doesn't reveal and emphasize the beauty of this frame at all. And the main task of processing is to give the frame a finished look, to remove unnecessary things that don't work in the frame and to emphasize and make more expressive what you want to draw special attention to. Next, we are going to go to the saturation tool. This can be added here as much as you need at once. It's a very good tool. I always increase this duration because it brings out all the shades and then we can work with them very well and comfortably. And when we don't add saturation, the frame looks great. After we open this photo in Photoshop, the colors will be very difficult to get and very difficult. That's why we add saturation to the level where we can see all the colors, when the picture stops being gray and gets bright shades. Next, I recommend to slightly remove texture, especially if your photo is too sharp and every hair is visible. This action will simplify the retouching process. We will not be tempted to remove every hair and dust by hand as they will no longer be so visible. For the same reason, I recommend removing the sharpen. I always turn it down to 0 because we don't need that much sharpening when retouching. If we make a strong sharpen, then all necessary moments in the frame will become quite obvious and noticeable. It will be hard to work with them later because they can remain stains when cleaning. We don't need it. Remove sharpness to 0. When we will work with these spots when retouching, everything will be fine and traces will not remain. Sharpness adds unnecessary noise, and yes, by the way, we also have an effects tab, but we don't add grain at this stage because it's the same as sharpen and texture. It will interfere with our retouching process, so we don't add it and remove it if these settings are not at 0 by default. Also, if your image was shot at a high ISO, you will probably see noise like this on it. You can reduce the noise with these 2 scales. You can remove black and white noise, you can remove color noise. I recommend to do it again to simplify the further process of retouching. The next important item at the stage of preparation for retouching is the export settings. The settings with which this picture will come out in Photoshop. Click here. You must have 16 bits and sRGB. That affects the color and that affects the quality. Make sure you have the same settings as me and click OK. These are all the mandatory points in the preparation stage. The photo is ready for us to open it in Photoshop and start retouching. But there are still optional tools that apply depending on what kind of photo you have. For example, there is crop. If you are confident in framing your shots, you can do this straight away. It's worth building on your knowledge of composition here, so be sure to watch my lecture on composition. Next, color mixture allows you to work separately with shades of different colors. I show you how it works. For example, we have a shot like this. Let's give it a more pleasing look. We can work here with the shade of red to make it lighter, darker, faded or more saturated, but it should be understood that our actions affect the red color, which is also present on the face. It doesn't suit us, so we would better work with the red color of the lips at the stage of detailed color correction in Photoshop. And about this you will see a separate lesson. And at this stage we cannot work with a separate piece of photo, we can only work with the whole area of the frame. Then there is another panel, Hue. Thanks to it we can change the shades of colors. Let's take another photo. Let's manipulate the hue of the sky. We can make it more purple or more blue. The grass is more green or more yellow, just like that. And this is where a knowledge of color theory comes in handy in order to adjust all the shades so that they harmonize with each other. That's why be sure to watch my lecture on color so that you know how to adjust the right shades so that they harmonize with each other. The next tool is the gradient filter. Gradient can sometimes come in handy for photos like this one. For example, we can see that there is a highlight on top. We can use a gradient to deal with that, like this, for example. Then we go to the main menu and look at the difference. We can see that we have got that highlight gone and the background is now homogeneous. Once you have set the settings on one frame, you can copy those settings to all the other frames. There are two ways to do this. One, you can just select all the photos and click Sync Settings. As you can see, the settings of one frame are copied to all other frames. The second way, you can save these settings as preset. To do this, click on the three dots, Create Preset. We can give it a name and now let's find it. Here it is. We can use it for other photos in the future. So you don't have to set the color on each photo individually. You do the color on one photo and on the other photos in this areas copy the settings. Usually it goes like this. You have done the shoot, selected the frames. You have only done the color on one photo and on all the others you just copy the settings from the first frame either by synchronization or by preset. After we have made preparations for retouching, we can click Open and the photo will open in a Photoshop window. A file will be created in the folder next to this photo. I'm going to show it to you now. This file contains the settings that we have made on this photo. And if we open this photo again in Camera Raw, we will automatically pull up all the settings that we have made. However, if we delete this file, we will not be able to open the settings we made before. We can also click Done, and in this case a file in XMP format will be created for all photos. That is, all the settings will be saved, and when we open these files again in Camera Raw, we will see all our settings, they will not disappear. That is, to save all the settings in the form in which you created them, you just need to click either Open or Done. We can also click Cancel, but in this case everything will be cancelled. When you are working in Lightroom or Capture One, you won't have an Open button. There will be an Export button. Export will mean that you can save all your pictures in a certain format and open them for further processing in Photoshop. That is, you will save these pictures in some format, and they will be in your folder in the form of certain files. That is, in addition to the raw files, you will have, for example, saved images in JPEG, TIFF or PSD format. In Lightroom and Capture One, you can calmly work, rotate colors, close the program, open the program and see that everything you have done before has not disappeared. Here in Camera Raw, you have to press either Done or Open. And it's by pressing these buttons, all settings will be saved and nothing will be lost. If after working in Camera Raw you don't want to process your photos further and your processing is finished and you just want to save all the pictures, you can just select them all, click here and choose the settings to save. For example, you choose JPEG format, color space as RGB. 8 bits will be automatically selected because there is no 16 bits for JPEG. Choose the size and folder to save to. So all these photos will be saved in JPEG format. This is a format that is suitable for publishing and sending. For convenient selection in the camera row, there is a rating. You can look at the photo, flip through using the arrows on the keyboard, and by clicking on the numbers, you can give them a rating. For example, I click on the number 2 here, and the rating changes. And then I put a 2 here and here. And now to see only all photos with rating 2, we press star rating 2. It's very convenient when you work with a large number of photos and make a selection. So if you want, you can use camera raw for selection, but in my opinion, the most convenient way to select photos is in a Capture One. If you are going to retouch the frame, I recommend you from Capture One, Lightroom or Camera Raw save pictures in TIFF or PSD format. The TIFF format is considered a working format where you can save and see all the layers that have affected the changes to that shot. If we switch them off, we can see that the picture was originally like this. This is super convenient. When retouchers work with advertising agencies, it can be necessary. The agency can send edits, and when you have all the layers in place, correcting some moments on different layers is very convenient. And when all the layers are brought together, it will be quite difficult for you to change something and may have to do the work again. When working with PSD and TIFF formats, you can edit and resave the photo as much as you need, and the quality will not be lost. In case of JPEG format, you won't have such an opportunity, and from each resave on the photo will appear various kinds of ugly pixels and artifacts. Format TIFF and PSD weigh quite a lot, unlike JPEG. For example, this file weighs 1 GB because it has no layers. The more layers, the more the file weighs. So if you have a series of more than 300 photos, for example, it's some kind of reportage shooting, then there will be other rules. Here you probably won't need retouching, and you can completely limit yourself to color correction in Camera Raw, Capture One or Lightroom. You can safely save these photos in JPEG format right away, even if after that you decide to open them once in Photoshop and apply some more action with the color adjustments. And let's take a look at the Photoshop interface. You may have a different look than I do. You may have a lot of different windows open. I am a minimalist and I only have the tools I need in the Photoshop workspace, and I encourage you to do the same. I'm going to show you how to manage your workspace in Photoshop. Let's say I only have 3 windows here. These are layers, actions and history. That's what you need. If you have any other windows, you can manage them like this. You can just pick them up and close them. If you don't have a window like history or actions, you can go to the window tab and add history and actions. The background color I have here is white. You can change it. It can be gray. It's more pleasing to the eye. But sometimes I need white to compare contrast and to see how the shades and the highlights look in relation to the white color. This is something we discussed when I told you about white balance. In this panel we have some of the tools that we'll need for retouching, but we don't need all of them. And in fact, not everything in Photoshop is necessary for processing photos. Remember that Photoshop is also used by designers, artists and illustrators. There are some tools that I need, but we don't need them for photos. I will only show you what we need for photo processing. To work on the further stages of processing, we will need to know what masks are. Masks allow you to work with separate pieces of a photo, not with the whole frame area, but with separate areas of it, both at the stage of retouching and at the stage of color correction. And now I will show you how masks works. Let's pretend that this is a photo. It's all pink, and now we are going to make some changes with this photo. For example, we are going to change the tone, hue saturation. Our photo has become like this. We don't want it to become like this completely, so we do an inversion, press Command plus I, and the photo becomes pink again, just like it was before. That's called the mask. And when it's black, it means that we cannot see the changes that we have made to the photo. The alteration layer is on, but the mask is black. That means that we cannot see the changes that we have made. When the mask is white, we can see the changes we have made. If you turn the layer off, we again don't see the changes. But you can switch it on and press Command+I and the mask becomes black. But we don't need to do this, we don't need these changes to be visible over the entire frame area. We only need it in a specific place. To do this, we press Command+I, take a brush and paint with white color where we want this effect. As a result, we now see a pink background and what we have drawn in the area of the frame where we need it. Next, we can take a black brush and paint over if we have painted too much. Next, we can take another panel like gradient. Again, we don't want it to be over the entire frame area. We need it in a specific place. We go to the mask again and make it black by pressing Command+I. Then, with the white brush on the black mask, we paint this effect where we want it. Now, let's see how this works on a photo. Here we have a photo and we take the solid color panel and choose red to tint the lips. I will tell you in detail later how to do this. Right now, I'm just going to show you figuratively so that you understand what a mask is. We don't need this red color on the whole area of the photo, so we make the mask black by pressing Command+I, and now with the white brush on the black mask we draw the red color only where we need it. As you can see, the lips have now turned out super unnatural. We can control the opacity on this layer and the hue on this panel. We will talk more about detailed color correction in lesson 4, but now we are ready to move on to retouching. Now that the photo is prepared for retouching and color correction, we move on to the third stage of processing, which is called retouching. Retouching is done in several steps, and there is no separate retouching for any particular type of skin. The retouching techniques are always the same, just like the color correction methods. The only difference is in intensity. There is no such thing that for the skin of a man there will be one method of retouching and for the skin of a woman there will be some other. There is no such thing that you have one processing tool for the skin of a child and another tool for processing the skin of an elderly person. The retouching techniques are always the same, only the intensity differs. Photoshop doesn't care what kind of skin you have in the photo. The only thing that matters to him is the texture. When retouching, we will work with the texture and also remove unnecessary elements that attract excessive attention. For example, these are the dots on the forehead, and make the skin smooth so that the texture is preserved completely and everything looks as if there was no retouching. In other words, we will learn with you how to do natural retouching as if in real life everything looked like this. Well, let's get started. Retouching will always start with cleaning, and for this we have several types of tools that will be in charge of making sure that we remove some unnecessary details in the photo that attract unnecessary attention and don't make the image better. For example, this photo. His style is a natural makeup. In this image we need clean skin. But we see that the skin here is flawed and there are some necessary elements. When cleaning, we will remove these excess elements and in subsequent steps we will achieve smooth skin. We need to clean the photo from unnecessary objects, in this case from such acne or from some hair. Here we can also see some hairs. We also see rather dry lips here. To fix all this, we need cleaning tools. But before we work with them and clean the whole photo, I suggest that you get acquainted with these tools and find out how they work. We start with a brush called the Spot Healing Brush tool. I use this tool more often than others. It works automatically. Let me explain with an example. Let's say we have a point. Click on this point and it disappears. Photoshop automatically selects the nearest area that is similar in color, texture, brightness, and replaces this point with the nearest area. We swipe the point and Photoshop selects what texture to replace this point with. In this way, we can work with all the points. In contrast to this tool, there is a healing brush tool. Unlike the Spot Healing Brush tool, this tool works manually. We choose where to copy the texture from. To do this, we will take some kind of stain, for example, this. And click here in the nearest place where, in our opinion, the texture we need is located. Hold down the Alt-K on Windows or Option on Mac and paint over. Now we have selected a texture from the nearest location. Thus, we ourselves decided which texture to replace our point with. Let's do it again. Let's say this spot interests us. We choose the texture and paint over. Choose the texture and paint over again. Here we also choose the texture and paint over. Try to do this and feel the difference between these tools. You can work with one tool or another. It's more convenient for me to always work with the spot healing brush tool, since for some small work it does a good job of removing all these small stains. In general, cleaning tools always work very well and automatically when they have where to get some similar texture. When there is some area from which it can copy information, as you can see, Photoshop does a great job automatically with all these stains. The texture looks uniform without any blemishes. Also, we can use this tool to remove not only acne but also any other points. Any minor imperfections in the photo that we don't need, we can remove with the help of this tool and it will be absolutely imperceptible. Here, we can remove it in the same way and it will be just as completely imperceptible. Another quite interesting and convenient tool for cleaning is called the patch tool. When working with it, we also choose where we get the texture from. For example, this is a bright spot. We select it and select where we will copy the texture from. We cannot copy the texture from here because then a strange ugly spot is formed. Press Ctrl Z on Windows or Command Z on Mac to go back. We need to copy the spot from an area with a similar texture. For example, here and here our spot is gone. Or, for example, we select this dent and select the nearest texture and we see that this stain has disappeared. In other words, when we work with cleaning tools, our task is to identify some unnecessary point imperfections on the skin and then remove them so that instead of them a uniform texture appears on the skin. I remind you that when working with the spot healing brush tool, Photoshop itself determines which texture to replace to unwanted stain. With the healing brush tool, you choose from which part of the image to take the texture. Let's move on. When working with the patch tool, you also choose where to copy the texture from. There is also such a tool as stamp. It's similar to the healing brush tool. In the same way, you choose where you want to copy the area from and draw. But unlike the healing brush tool, it works less intuitively. That is, it just copies some area instead of your spot. The healing brush tool does not just copy some area from which you decided. It also takes into account textural and light characteristics. From this, we conclude that for retouching, the healing brush tool is best suited. Later, we will look at examples where it's appropriate to use the stamp tool, but we don't need it now. Now we can use the spot healing brush tool or patch tool. Decide for yourself what is more convenient for you to use. Then compare the result when you work with a particular tool. It takes some getting used to. And now we are ready to move on to cleaning this photo. I will go back in history to the very beginning and show you how to do it. You may have noticed when we use the spot healing brush tool or any other tool, if we remove stains, then we may have some kind of dip in the texture a little, or there are some stains. To avoid this and retouching has become even neater, even cooler and even better, we will work with layers. First, we will work with dark spots and then with light ones. So the result will be of higher quality and the texture will be more uniform and uniform. You and I create an empty layer and select the spot healing brush tool on the toolbar. Please make sure that you have all the settings on the top panel like mine, and here in the mode panel we select lighten. This means that now we will work with dark spots. Mode lighten, we work with dark spots. Then we will install darken and work with light spots. What will happen now? Now when we run the brush over the spots, only dark areas are removed. As you can see, I run over the spot, but only the dark side is removed. Light remains. Due to this, the texture is of higher quality. We can also work out such thin folds on the skin with the help of a spot healing brush tool, and now I will work with dark spots and remove them all on the skin. In such case, like this crease on the eyelids, we can also use a spot healing brush tool. As you can see, this crease becomes less noticeable. It's not necessary to completely remove it, but you can make it not so pronounced. After I have worked through all the dark spots, I start working on the light spots. To do this, I simply switch the mode to darken mode and the light points that we have left I will remove in the same way. Let's look at the before and after, and in this way let's work. When we have darken selected in mode, we can also work with blonde hair. We just run the brush over the blonde hairs and they disappear. It looks as natural as possible. So I'm done cleaning. Compare the result before and after. As you can see, we no longer have point imperfections in the photo. We compare the result before and after in this area. But at the same time, if we look at the photo as a whole, we notice that the light and shadow pattern is still uneven and the skin doesn't look smooth. But we will fix this in the next step. And this step will be called dodge and burn retouching method. The principle of its operation is simple. We will lighten the dark spots and darken the light ones. We will work with the help of curves. Create a curves layer. And here our task is to identify some dark spots. Select the eyedropper on the toolbar, then press your finger and lighten a little. After that, we invert the mask by pressing Command-I on the Mac or Ctrl-I on Windows. Now we take a white brush. With a white brush, always paint on a black mask. Opacity 16%, flow 26%. And now our task will be to lighten all the dark spots. At the same time, we will work with the brush as artists. That is, we will not just take and paint over some spots, we will make light strokes several times in order to better see the dark spots that we need to work with. We will create another layer, black and white, and drag the red to the left. Thus, we now see the dark spots more clearly. We also see that we can now work with the next spots. Let me show them to you. We see that we have a dark spot here, a blackout here. There are two dark spots here too. There are small dark spots. They are too large to be cleaned with cleaning tools, especially since cleaning tools are useless here, because these stains do not depend on texture in any way. In other words, the texture of the skin in these places is not damaged in any way, but the light and shadow pattern is uneven, so these spots just need to be lightened. There is no need to zoom in so close to the picture and work with such spots. Look at the whole image. I don't recommend getting too close. Let the size of the photo be the maximum like this, so you will better see which stains should be removed. And if you zoom too close, then you will begin to remove absolutely everything and spend a lot of time, and this will not lead to any high quality result. You won't see the light and shadow pattern you are working with, and so I will actually be working blindly. We work as much as possible on this scale, and let's see what it will look like. We take a white brush, set the settings so that the brush becomes transparent. I usually work in such values, and when I say take a transparent brush, this means that its settings will always be same like this. At the same time, rigidity is always at 0. In very rare cases, we set a stiffness greater than 0%, and this will be isolated cases. I will talk about them later when necessary. Now we don't need it at all. We always have such a classic and not hard brush. We choose this brush, and now we'll lighten the dark spots. For example, here we have two dark spots, and I will run the brush several times with light movements, and you can still do it here and there. And what do we see now? Let's take a look at the before and after result. As you can see, there are no more dark spots, and we see that the light shadow pattern has become more even, and the skin looks smoother. This is exactly the whole principle of dodge and burn retouching. We need it so that highlight all dark spots and darken the light spots, and due to this, the skin becomes smooth. But at the same time, we will not lose texture at all. It will remain 100%. Let's get to work. Now I will lighten these dark spots. Repeat after me. I remind you that we work with light movements, we make several strokes on the same spot. Some spots will be darker, some less dark. Therefore, somewhere we need to hold the brush 3 times, for example, and somewhere 10 times. Once again, look at the before and after. The stains disappear. Well, begin. Don't be scared if something doesn't work out for you right now, especially if you are trying it for the first time. When I first tried this method of retouching, I had a long resistance and I didn't understand how it is even possible to determine what to clean, what not to clean, and how you can do it carefully. I resisted for a long time. Tried for a long time to find some simpler methods of retouching, but later it turned out that in fact all the coolest top retouchers in the world use this method in order to achieve the very natural retouching that I was striving for. So you just need to keep practicing and you will definitely succeed. Try to practice and train more often. And now that this is the very retouching method that will lead you to a natural result. With it, you will not have soapy skin in the photo. Please note that you have already found the right approach to photo processing, and you only need to consciously practice to get used to this method. I assure you that the quality of your photos will get better very soon, as it once happened to me. We evaluate the result before and after. As you can see, the light and shadow pattern in the photo becomes absolutely stunning. At the same time, the texture is preserved. I will now continue to do this more quickly and turn on acceleration, and we'll meet when I'm done and we are ready to darken the bright spots. I constantly change the size of the brush using the square brackets that are on the right side of the keyboard. That is, I don't have to click on the magnifying glasses or here every time to change the size of the brush. This is done using keys. And notice that we don't need to make the entire face uniform in brightness. There are some protruding parts on the face for which it is absolutely normal that they are lighter than some other parts of the face. For example, here is a completely normal bright spot. We do not need to darken it when working with the dodge and burn retouching method. And it is absolutely normal that, for example, there is a shadow or that there is a bright spot here. It's a flare, it's okay. It looks absolutely normal. We don't need to darken it. And in order to see all this, we have to look at the whole photo. So we are ready to darken the light spots, and for that we will create the next layer, new layer, curves. Here I choose my finger and take some light area that I would like to work with. For example, there are some bright spots here. Darken it. So we created a dark curve, then we press Ctrl-I on Windows or Command-I on Mac in order to make an inversion. We take a white transparent brush and now we will work with light spots to darken them. For example, here I see a light area and I will swipe with the brush. To darken it, again we compare the result before and after. This is a grid. I will work a little more with some light spots. Usually there are fewer light spots than dark ones. When we interact with this layer, there is much less work, because if you look, in general, the light and shadow pattern looks absolutely smooth and pleasant. If suddenly we see some dark spots, we can always return to this layer, to this mask, and continue to work with dark spots. That being said, note that we can also go back to the layer itself and try to adjust the curves. But now we don't need it. Just know that this is also possible. Here we have some bright spot that remains after this car. We can work with him. Now I'm darkening it with the dark curve. And with the help of a light curve, I will work out dark spots. As you can see, the stain changes due to these manipulations. I was almost done and temporarily turned off the black and white layer to look at the photo in its natural color and refine some points. You can always reduce the opacity value here if you think the result looks too unnatural. You can also take a black brush, and if it seems to you that in some moments you overdid it, for example, it seems to me that here I overdid it, I can go back to the previous result that was before my work with this layer. If you need to, you can always create another layer of curves and work with individual spots. For example, I would like to work with this stain on a separate layer, make it a little lighter, because by working with this layer I cannot do it and it's not very convenient. So I create a new curves layer, I choose my finger and make it a little lighter. Then I invert the mask, take a white transparent brush and work specifically with this spot. And that's how I made it a little lighter. And now this spot is not so clearly evident when we look at the whole picture. The black and white layer can be removed, and now we can look at how the picture has changed after working with the dodge and burn retouching method. As you can see, the skin has become smooth, there are no blemishes, but the texture is not lost. It's 100% saved. And we can see it. The skin looks great, but I care about the eyebrows. Here, too, there are some light and dark areas. Let's try to work with them. I will go back to the layer where we worked with the light spots. Choose a white brush and start working with eyebrows. I will also choose the layer where we worked with the dark spots and highlight some of the dark spots. And so I finished the finished touches. Let's compare what the picture looked like before and after. The dodge and burn retouching method is very suitable for any elements in the photo when we need to make them smooth. That is, here we made the skin smooth and at the same time didn't lose texture. As you can see, it looks natural. We could also work with any other objects or elements. If we had to make it smooth, we would just highlight the dark spots. The light spots were darkened and this object would become smooth. You can also use this method to work with completely different photos. Next, I have another option for you on how you can use the dodge and burn retouching method, and for this we need an action. Go to the Actions panel and click on Load Actions. Select the action that you should already have downloaded. Click Open. This is the folder where the action we need is located, and here is the action. We select it and let's expand it to see what actions it's going to perform. Click on the play icon. And so we have created two layers. We need a black and white layer so that we can better see light and dark spots, and we will work on this layer. We don't need to create a mask here because we will need tools, the dodge tool and the burn tool. Tools that allow you to lighten dark spots and darken light spots. And let's work with this stain and see what it will look like. Take the dodge tool, stiffness 0% and exposure 10%. Now let's try to lighten this area. With light movements, we walk along this spot. And as you can see, it has become lighter. Practice a few times to get used to this method, and you will definitely succeed at the highest level. Let's take the burn tool and darken the light part. As you can see, this area becomes homogeneous and the stain disappears, and we can continue to work. We continue to darken the light spots and lighten the dark ones. Now let's see how this will work for larger spots. Compare the result before and after. As you have already noticed, the effect is exactly the same. But for some, this method will be more convenient. If anything, you can use it. Let's turn off the black and white layer and see what it looks like in the end. If some gray spots are formed, there is nothing to worry about. Later in this lesson on detailed color correction, I will tell you what to do if gray spots remain after retouching. Spoiler alert, we'll be painting them. This is done very easily and quickly. And now we are ready to learn the following retouching method. I propose now to combine these layers so that they don't attract too much attention. Next, we move on to the third step at the retouching stage, and this step is not mandatory. If you look at my analysis, which I do regularly on Instagram, you will see that I very often have a cleaning step and a dodge and burn retouching step when retouching my skin. But very rarely there is a method of retouching frequency separation. I don't recommend using this retouching method for the entire face area. You need to know that this retouching method is faster and easier than dodge and burn, but it always takes away a certain percentage of the texture and the skin may look unnatural or become slightly blurry. Therefore, in order to achieve a natural texture and a good result, I recommend using the dodge and burn retouching method to a greater extent. And the frequency separation retouching method is used only in individual cases, locally and in certain places. Now I'm going to tell you what that means. For example, here I am absolutely satisfied with how the skin looks. I don't want to make it any smoother, it looks absolutely natural and everything is fine with it. But I care about the lip area and I would like the lower lip to get a more pleasant texture. And for this, we can work with the retouching method frequency separation. Let's get started. In order to work with this method, we need an action. You need to download it, you have it in the attached files. Download it and let's add it. In order to load an action, we go to the Actions panel and click on the three dots here and select Load Actions. Find the folder where you downloaded action. Select frequency separation, click open, and now we see that it has appeared in the action panel. Here is the folder with this action. It should be understood that this is a folder. That is, if you have a folder located, you cannot do anything with. Your play button is not active. Therefore, you need to click on the arrow and highlight action. Then the button will become active. Let's take a look at what this action consists of. It consists of several steps. When we press the play button, this action will be carried out automatically. You can enable dialog boxes here. And then at each stage, Photoshop will ask you what values you would like to set by numbers. I propose to turn it off now. Later, I will explain why these dialogs are needed and in which case they should be enabled. Let's turn them off first. And so we selected this action and pressed play. There were some actions. What we see is that we have two layers in the group. Now, with the help of this action, we have decomposed the photo into high and low frequencies. What does it mean to translate into an understandable language? This means that we have separated the texture from the light and shadow pattern. If we zoom in on the photo now, you will see that when you turn off the texture, the photo has become slightly soapy. In the same way, we enable the texture but disable the bottom layer, we will see a very sharp photo. This means that we can now work separately with the light and shadow pattern without affecting the texture. Let's get started and you will see how it works. In order to make the lower lip area smoother, I will work with the mixer brush tool. If you don't have the mixer brush tool in this menu, then click on the three dots, edit toolbar, and add the mixer brush tool to this menu. That's it. We take the mixer brush tool and let's check the settings on the top bar. Be careful, the settings for this brush should be exactly the same as mine. I recommend setting such percentage settings. You don't have a tick here, there is no checkmark here either, there is no checkmark here, and there is a tick here, we have this button highlighted, this button is not active. And let's see how the mixer brush tool works. The mixer brush tool blends everything in its path. If we keep a continuous line throughout the photo, then it will mix absolutely everything in its path. We don't need that. So we work with the mixer brush tool, we don't draw solid lines. That's it. We work locally in a specific area. For example, if we work with lips, we don't work like that. This way does not suit us. With light, intermittent, circular movements, we mix the area a little at a time. As you can see, the lower lip becomes more blended and less textured. Thus, the light and shadows pattern on the lower lip becomes less textural and softer. This is what the method of retouching is useful, frequency separation. Thanks to it, we can achieve some softness and the light shadow pattern. Sometimes it is necessary when we cannot achieve it with the dodge and burn retouching method. Also, the retouching method frequency separation will be very useful when working with the background. For example, if you need to make the background more even. Then there are some irregularities, faults in the background or faults in clothes. The frequency separation reduction method is perfect for this. Please note that if we pull the line from the dark area to the light one, then we will create dark lines. Conversely, if you pull from a light area to a dark one, light lines will be created. That's why we don't work that way. We work carefully and locally. We remove the texture and see that we have now completely mixed the light and shadows pattern and begin to look homogeneous. When working with the brush, I make sure that the light and shadow pattern looks even. Now, of course, it looks as unnatural as possible. We will not leave it like that. Of course, one could simply lower the opacity volume. Yes, lip has become softer, but I want to offer you a more professional way, and let's have 100% opacity for now. I suggest you add a new texture from another photo. This texture is not too similar to the texture of the lips. That is, we don't even have where to get this texture in this photo. Therefore, I suggest using a different image. There is such a photo. I downloaded it from the internet, and here the texture is pronounced. Of course, we could take just a piece of this photo and insert our lips into that area. But I suggest you don't copy the lips, but only the texture. What we will do for this? We will take action frequency separation, and now this layer is just responsible for the texture. If we copy it, Ctrl+C for Windows and Command+C for Mac, and paste it, Ctrl+V for Windows, Command+V for Mac, we will see that we have not copied the bottom layer. That is, we copied only the texture. Here the lips are turned to the right side. Let's deploy them. To do this, we will click here, next, free transform and flip horizontal. Now the lips are turned in the right direction, and let's implement them in this area. First, I work on the size. Now the size seems to fit. Then I click Warp. Warp will allow me to work in more detail in order to implant this area on the lower lip. Well done, and now our task is to erase to excess. To do this, we create a mask and make an inversion of this mask by pressing Ctrl+I for Windows or Command+I for Mac. Next, we take a white brush and draw the texture where we need it. That is on the lower lip. I would have worked a little more with the upper lip and slightly corrected the color here. I took the color from here and shifted it a little in this direction. There used to be a gray spot, but now it's not visible. I will soften the texture a bit here. Well done. I will slightly reduce the opacity value on the group of frequency separation layers, and also slightly reduce the opacity value of the texture that appears. You can reduce it to the point where it looks as natural as possible. Now it looks just great, in my opinion. The only thing, the lower lip. I would darken a little, so let's create a curves layer. We already know what needs to be done. We are just obscuring that area slightly. We make an inversion of the mask, take a 100% white brush and run it along the lower lip. We can go back to the curves layer and adjust the brightness. The lower lip has become more similar in brightness and color to the upper lip, and now I'm absolutely satisfied with this result. I hope you did the same. If there is nothing to worry about, try a few times. What else can be done with frequency separation? Specifically in this photo, you can work with eyebrows. Now I will show you how it will work. Let's run our action again. We decompose the photo into layers, and being on the bottom layer, we work with this area. It bothers me because here the eyebrows are quite textured, and here it seems to be a softer part, and it stands out for its softness. We can take a very thin brush, the mixer brush tool, and try to draw something like hairs in this area in this way. As you can see, lines appear, and this area no longer looks so soft. Compare the result before and after. As you can see on the screen, the eyebrows have become more textured and as if extra hairs have been added. It looks interesting and much more pretty. We can work separately with this area, we can lower the opacity value of this group, but I am satisfied with the result that turned out in this part. And here I would like to reduce the value of opacity a little. To do this, I will create a mask. I will make an inversion, I will take a brush. Let's put the settings somewhere approximately, and now let's use a white brush and this area. You are done. We continue to talk about frequency separation, and now I will use a picture that has a smaller size than the previous picture. This photo was taken on camera. This photo was taken on the phone, and when you are working with pictures that are smaller than the regular photos that a professional camera takes, you may have some trouble working with action for frequency separation. Now I will describe it. Let's click on play. We decompose the picture into frequencies. Here we have created 2 layers. Turn off the texture layer, and we see that there is too much blur on the face and it does not suit us. I suggest you set the blur value you want. What do I need to do? Let's remove this group of layers, and in order to set the size manually, we need to enable the dialog boxes. Click here and click OK. Now we have these squares. What this means is that at each stage, Photoshop will ask us what settings we want to set. Now that we are going to click on play, let's see how it works. Here we have windows popping up. We click OK, OK, and here is the Gaussian blur, and here we need to set a suitable blur volume. Now it's too much. What should be the blur? We look at the value at which the skin loses its texture. For example, here we still see the texture, but here the texture is not visible. That is, this value suits us much better. Let me remind you that it was 5, but 3.7 suits us. 3.7 pixels is absolutely enough for us to work with the light and shadow pattern in this photo. Click OK and then also click OK. Everything always remains the default here, and also click OK. And here too. Oh, OK. All layers are ready. Now when we turn off the texture layer, what we see is that the blur is not strong and we are ready to go. But I don't usually install dialog boxes because all my photos are plus or minus the same size. And if I'm using action frequency separation here, then the amount of blur here will be exactly what I need. As you can see, the blur here is not strong and perfect for working with this picture. That is, in the case of a large-sized photo, I don't need dialog boxes and I don't need to set the blur manually. Further, as I have already told you, always when retouching, I recommend that you first do the cleaning stage, then the dodge and burn retouching method. And if necessary, in some specific places we can use frequency separation, but I don't recommend using it on the entire face area. But it so happens that you don't like the dodge and burn retouching method, or you simply don't have time for it, or for some reason you are very fond of frequency separation and you decide to use it on the entire facial area. That is, don't use dodge and burn, but use the frequency separation retouching method, and this is the photo after cleaning. We will not use the dodge and burn retouching method, but use frequency separation at once to work with the entire skin. What will happen and what is the best way to do it to make it look good? Go to the bottom layer, turn off the texture layer and create a solid color layer with the 50% gray. Click OK. Then select the blending mode, color. We need this layer in order for us to see dark and light spots on the skin. Then we will delete it. We go to the bottom layer and here we can use the patch tool and thus remove all dark spots. At the same time, note that the texture layer is currently disabled and we are not working with it. This is what the frequency separation method is good for, namely the fact that we can work with the light shadow pattern without touching the texture. As you can see, this is done quite quickly. But at the same time, now let's look at the quality and the difference, how the photo looks when working with the dodge and burn retouching method and what the frequency separation method looks like. Let's say we did it all over our faces. Turn off the gray layer and turn on the texture. Let's look at the result. Now we don't have any dented skin and there is even texture. But let's take a look and compare with the dodge and burn retouching method. This is what the photo looked like before, and this is what it looks like after. Here the result is much better, plus I also worked with colored spots, and in the end, after retouching, the image looks like this. Let's compare it with the raw photo. With frequency separation, we would never have achieved such a natural result. Using the frequency separation method, we still lose a little texture and we buy soap on the skin. That is why I don't recommend using frequency separation on the entire skin area. That is why I don't recommend using frequency separation on the entire skin area. Use frequency separation after the dodging burn retouching method. That is when you have already made the skin smooth and you just want to soften some area of the skin. So let's fix it some more. When retouching, I recommend that you do the cleaning first. That is, remove all unnecessary points and point imperfections or some thin folds. Next, we do the dodging burn retouching method to make the skin smooth and still retain 100% texture. Further, we still have some points that we would like to soften. We can use the frequency separation retouching method. You can use the patch tool on the bottom layer as I showed earlier, or as I showed with the example of lips, use the mixer brush tool. What else can we do with frequency separation? But this is an interesting point. We can work with the creases on the clothes. We open this photo and we use the frequency separation retouching method. Go straight to the bottom layer, select the mixer brush tool. We begin to smooth out the folds. At the same time, as you understand, you can also work with the dodge and burn retouching method, light and dark spots and dark and light spots. But very often it's for working with folds that frequency separation is quite suitable, and the folds can be dealt with quite successfully. Let's compare the result before and after. And if, for example, there are some folds that are on the texture layer, we can also go to the texture layer and remove them. We can go back to the skin layer and work on this area more. We can go to this layer and slightly lower the opacity value to make it more natural. Using the dodge and burn retouching method, I got this result. That is, I did not completely smooth out this whole area. I left some hollows. It seems to me that it looks more natural, more beautiful. Some small folds are gone and only large ones remain, which create some dynamics and show the fabric as it really is. With frequency separation, this is the result, but you can reduce it a little and it will also turn out quite naturally. And now I suggest you see how to decompose layers into frequency manually in order to perform the method of retouching frequency separation without action. Before that, we worked with action, which does it for us. And it's amazing. You can use it. You already know how to work with dialog boxes and select all volumes manually. You can work without them. And it all works great. But anything can happen in life. Let me show you how to make these layers without action. And for this, we need to make two duplicates of the layer. Click Duplicate Layer, OK, and create another duplicate layer, OK. We are on the bottom layer. Turn off the top layer. This layer will be responsible for the light shadow pattern. This layer will be responsible for the texture. And now we will prepare them. Being on the bottom layer, we will perform Gaussian blur. Press Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur, and we put here a blur that suits us. I will put 5 and click OK. Next, we must prepare a layer with the texture. Let's turn it on. Here our picture becomes sharp. So, to enable it, we need to click Image, Apply Image. Here we select Background Copy To and check the box next to Invert, Blending Add, Opacity 100%, Scale 2, Offset 1. Repeat all these settings and click OK. You should get this result where the photo is gray, but at the same time you can see the texture. And then we put this layer in linear light blending mode. Let's take these two layers and place them in a group. And so we performed the decomposition of the photo into frequencies. And that's what our action did. And we did it manually now. And now we have exactly the same layer texture. There is a layer that is blurred, responsible for the light shadow pattern. Now we are ready for further work, and you already know how to work. This completes the retouching. In this photo, we have nothing else to retouch, but now, while we are working with this photo, I want to show you some more tricks that may be useful to you in your work. In this photo, freckles can fit very well if we draw them. In general, the model originally had small freckles, but because of the makeup and light, in the end, they are completely invisible. Let's draw freckles on the model's face. To do this, you and I will need brushes. You also have them in the materials attached to the lesson, and you need to download them. Next, we click on this arrow, and then on this import brushes icon. And select brushes from the folder where you downloaded it. Click open, brushes appear it here. And click on this arrow to see what brushes are in this folder. Here we find a brush called Freckles 1 and 2, and we will use them to draw freckles. We create a blank layer and take the color in the dark part of the face. For example, here, choose the Freckles 1 brush and draw a few freckles. Completely random, it can be of different sizes, you can be small, big, let them be different. And create another layer and take the Freckles 2 brush and let's continue to draw. Here, freckles of a slightly different shape are already obtained. It suits us. We continue to draw. Now we have two layers that are responsible for freckles. Of course, we will not leave it at all in this form. And now I'm going to take a regular brush. First, turn off the top layer and work with the bottom. Press Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we blur our freckles a little. Click OK and switch the layer to the soft light blending mode. Well done! Now we can touch up our freckles. Click Solid Color. Let's choose some random color for now. OK. Next, click Create Clipping Mask. Now, as you can see, freckles are stained. We can choose some suitable color. I will leave it like this for now. We go to another layer, turn it on, press Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Our freckles become blurry. I would have blurred them a little more, probably. Let's say it's like this, and we choose the soft light blending mode, and we can also paint these freckles. Select solid color, choose any random color to start with, click OK, and also click Create Clipping Mask so that this color is applied only to freckles and not to the entire skin. It already looks amazing, but I suggest working with the masks of these layers. Once on the first layer, we create a mask and click on Ctrl-I or Command-I depending on your operating system. Being on the second layer, we also create a mask and press Ctrl-I or Command-I, and now we go to the mask of the first layer. Take a white brush, opacity 18%, flow 28%. The opacity and flow values can be approximately always 15 and 25%. Now I put 18 and 28, it suits us. And now with a white brush on a black mask, I will paint freckles where I would like them to appear. I run the brush several times in the same area and freckles appear. Now I choose the mask of the second layer and do the same. Then, holding down the Shift K, click on the last layer and on the first. In this way, they stand out. I group them together. We can look before and after and reduce the opacity value for the whole group. It will be more natural, and now we'll look at the result. These are the freckles we got. We'll look at the before and after compare. You can always go back to any of the layers to correct something. You can, for example, double click here and adjust the color if you want. It comes out even more naturally this way, and the freckles look very cute. Now I will show you a method by which we can paint eyelashes where they are not. For example, here we have two lonely cilia. We can try adding a few more lonely cilia here. To do this, we need to create an empty layer. We will work with the brush 0% hardness, and we will take the color that is present on the eyelashes. We can of course take just black, but it will look very bright, and eyelashes, as you can see, are not black but brown. Click OK. We take the brush and click here and here. We select shape dynamics. Next, control fade. Let's choose size 150. We can check how this brush draws, and let's try to draw cilia with it. I changed the size of the brush. It's thicker than thinner. Let's leave this option. But that's not all. We don't put it that way. First, we will look at the before and after result, and secondly, we will click here, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and work with blur. Because our cilia are not so clear, in fact, and it won't hurt us to blur them a little. Click OK. Our cilia are very clear, and you can see that we have drawn them. Here they are no longer like that. We will also work with the color of these cilia. Click solid color. Let's try to make it darker. Click OK. Next, create clip and mask. Now they look too dark. Let's work in even more detail with color. Let's say like this. We can reduce the opacity volume. Well done. Let's see how it looks now. We compare the results before and after. Now several new eyelashes have appeared in front of our model. You can also use this brush to add eyebrows. Let's create a new layer and take the color that is on the eyebrows. Next, take a brush and try to redraw a few strokes. This is great. I would also work with color. Of course, we should blur these hairs. Press filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Let's adjust the blur volume and work on the color. Click solid color. OK. Then create clip and mask. It turned out to be too dark a color. Let's fix it. Oh, trillion! Guys, it's great. If we want to erase some hairs from some areas, we can always create a mask. Take a black brush. Just don't forget to change the settings here and uncheck shape dynamics. Let's try to clean it a little here. I will take a clear brush. Oh, thrilling! This is great. We can also control the opacity volume. And as you can see, we also worked with the eyebrow. Let's combine all these layers into a group. Wow, God, amazing. Look how great it looks. Next, I want to share with you an action thanks to which you can add some texture to the skin. And let's open the Actions panel and load a new action. Click Load Actions and select Action Skin Texture. Then click on the button Open. It's a folder and there is an action in it. Select this action and click on Play. Now we'll have dialog boxes popping up, and everywhere you need to click OK or Continue. Select the Layers panel. Now we can see that we have created a new layer with a texture, and here immediately the mask is black. That is, it's immediately prepared so that we take a white brush and draw the texture where we need it. Opacity 100%, flow is also 100%. Now I will show you what it looks like. We swipe the brush and see that we have some noise on the skin. Due to this noise, it may seem that the texture is much more pronounced. We compare before and after, but I don't recommend using a 100% brush. Let's take and do opacity, for example, 30% and flow 48. and make several strokes of different intensity in different areas. Be careful not to accidentally draw this texture, for example, on the lips, on the teeth, or on the whites of the eyes, because there is no such texture there. This is how you can add texture to your skin. Please use this section for such a task. Next, open this photo and using it as an example, I will show you a cool method by which you can copy some areas of the photo and embed them in another desired area. I think you have noticed that the eyebrows look a little crooked in this photo. I'm not going to change one eyebrow or the other eyebrow or try to change it with retouching. I'm just going to take a piece of that eyebrow and put it in that area. How I'm going to do it? We take the lasso tool and let's select the right eyebrow so that there is some area of skin on the sides. Next, I press Command C and then Command V or Ctrl C, Ctrl V if you have Windows, and we create an empty layer on which just this piece was formed. Next, we click on Free Transform and let's flip that piece by tapping on Flip Horizontal. We have flipped this piece horizontally and now we can try to insert it in the right place. To see if everything works out for sure, let's lower the opacity value and see, yes, everything looks great. And in general, we see that the eyebrows looks even and we are ready to introduce this piece into this area more precisely. To begin with, we create a mask and with the black 100% brush we will go along the edges. As you can see, the edges are sharp now and it doesn't suit us. We go around the edges and leave only a piece of the eyebrows. Next, we can also click again Free Transform, Warp. This will allow us to introduce this piece into this area more precisely. Now we look at the result before and after. Use this method whenever you have something that looks hopeless, such as an eyelid. You can simply copy the eyelid on the other side. For example, there are some problems with part of the lip. You can copy part of the lip from the neighboring area. You can use this method wherever you need to replace some area that doesn't lend itself to retouching. Using this photo as an example, I will show you how to cut out fluffy objects. Everything is clear when we can cut out an object that has clear edges, but it is completely incomprehensible how to cope with all such fluffy moments. So let's see what we are going to do. Let's highlight the background. To do this, I use the magic wand tool. I click once and we see that the selection is now incomplete. I hold down the Shift K and left click again and again, and now we see that our dog is highlighted. We cannot leave the edges like this, because if we want to change the background, then we'll get such a low quality result. Therefore, we will act differently. Click Select and Mask. Here we take such a brush. Here the plus should be highlighted, and here you can control the size of the brush and check the settings so that all your settings match mine. This is where you need to install on black. There is a real-time tick here, and we just paint on the edge with this brush. And as you can see, the dog becomes with fluffy edges and not with torn ones as it was before. Now we can click OK. The selection has become more accurate, and when we try to repaint the background, we can see that the dog looks fluffy and the edges look fluffy too. Many people often have questions about how to treat hair, how to make it smoother, or how to remove excess hairs, and I think it's important to pay special attention to this, and let's practice working with hair. The first thing that is important to understand is that there are not special tools and methods for hair treatment, and we will use all the same methods and tools that you already know. And the second important thing is that all hairstyles are divided into fluffy and smooth. And in the case of fluffy hair, the absolute norm is to leave such an uneven edge. If the hair is fluffy, it's absolutely normal that there are some small hairs here. At the same time, if the hair is smooth, then here are just these small hairs are knocked out and attract too much attention. And this is not the norm, and it needs to be removed. Therefore, when working with fluffy hair, never strive to create any clear edge. It will always look unnatural and strange. The only thing we can do when working with such fluffy hair is to make it less sharp. That is, you can blur them a little. Let's see how this can be done, and you will learn it. Let's fix it. First, we will use all the same tools that we are already familiar with. And secondly, if you have fluffy hair in the photo, never make it a clear edge. Fine hairs, it's okay. And if you have smooth hair, then you will remove these small hairs. And let's get started. The first thing we will talk about is a situation where some small hairs stand out against your hair. How will we work with them? We will create an empty layer, and just as we worked with the facial cleansing, we will work with hair cleaning. That is, on an empty layer in the darken blending mode, we will remove light hairs. I finished with the blonde hairs and can compare the result before and after. Please note that I did not remove all the hairs, but only those that stand out too clearly. Without them, it already looks much better. There is such an interesting situation here that here the hair looks quite fluffy, and we will not try to make a straight line here, but here the hair looks quite smooth, and here we can try to remove these dark hairs. How are we going to do it? I'm going to create another empty layer, and that's where I'm going to work with the stamp tool. Since we have a uniform background, stamp will do the job perfectly. The stamp tool is similar in principle to the healing brush tool. The difference is that the healing brush tool takes into account the texture and color next to the object that we are removing. And the stamp tool simply copies the area we want to copy. For example, I want to replace this area with the hair with the plain area from the background. And what will it look like? I press the option K and take the texture and color from here. And now I run it around the area with fluffy hair. And now they were gone, and that's how great the stamp tool copes with such hairs. Let's continue to work like this. Here you can also set the lighten mode, and then only dark hairs will be removed exactly and nothing else. At this point, I will take a smaller brush. I remind you that the smaller the brush, the clearer its edge. That is less blurry. Additionally, I created a layer to remove dark hairs that are present on the skin, for example, in this area. And there are some points like here. I propose to work out this area with the stamp tool. Ready? Let's take a look at what I have done. To begin with, I removed the blonde hairs with the Helen brush tool. Next, I worked with the stamp tool on those dark hairs that stand out from the background. And we can see how this area has changed here as well. Here I would not touch my hair because it looks very natural and does not raise questions. I also removed some dark hairs. We can see it in this area here as well. Then there are a couple more strokes that we can make. This is the hair that has remained on the clothes. How we'll work with them? We create an empty layer and take the stamp tool. And then, pointwise and carefully, we'll fill this area with pieces from the color where there is no hair. This piece looks strange and we cannot feel it. We can just cut it off. Let's take the selection tool and in this way we will select the area. Then press the right mouse button and click Make Selection. Blur 1 pixel. Okay, now we can take the stamp again and just paint over this area. It's cool. Let's move on. We have a few blonde hairs left here. We removed them on the first layer. I returned to it and carefully walked through the blonde hairs. So we have understood how to work with small hairs that stand out from the background and how to work with those small hairs that stand out in the general mop of hair of fall on the face. Next, I propose to combine the layers, and the next thing that we can consider is how we can use frequency separation to make hair smoother. For example, this effect will not interfere with this area. We take with you an action for frequency separation, press play, and we now have two layers. We will work on the bottom layer and use the mixer brush tool. Check all the settings so that they are exactly the same as mine. And here I just work on the smoothness of the hair, drawing long, solid lines with a brush. Somewhere I draw lines from top to bottom, somewhere from bottom to top, somewhere thicker lines, somewhere thinner. Now the hair looks super smooth and I will lower the opacity value to make it look more natural. I would put opacity at 52%. As you can see, the hair has become smoother. Next, for such fluffy edges, I recommend blurring. To do this, we create a duplicate layer and we can of course use Gaussian blur, but let's try another method. Go to the menu, Filters, Camera Raw Filters. This is where I lower the texture volume. Okay. Now I create a mask and press Command I or Control I on Windows. in order to invert the mask. Now take a white 100% brush and run it over the hair area. And now we can observe how this area has become less textured. By the way, remember the method I showed you for volume and for adding highlights? For hair, you can use it too. You can make some strands lighter, other darker, so the hair can become more shiny. Now let's talk about the liquify tool. I took my photo. Hello, it's me, and it's me too. And people often like to write to me in the comments that I have different eyes. I don't see any drawback or problem in this, but this is a good example to show you how you can, for example, make the eyes even, or how you can make the face symmetrical and correct the oval of the face. We also work with the body, and let's get started. Go to the menu filter, liquify. This is a panel for working with plastic. And first, let's work with the oval of the face. The first thing I can say about plastic is that the pressure of the brush should always be small, because if it's large, it will react like this, and we don't need such an effect. Therefore, we reduce the pressure volume to a minimum. I always have it at 6, and I'm fine with that. Here we can adjust the size, and we need this tool just in order to correct some edges. The next important point is that your brush size should always be suitable for the area that you are going to adjust. For example, if you are working with this part of the face, then your brush should be about this size. And if you are working with this part, then the brush should be just about the same small size. In this case, everything will be very successful, beautiful, and natural look. I have already corrected this line, and now I want to correct this line so that it looks like this one, and add a little bit of this band here. Now I want to repeat the line so that is like here. To do this, I will first take a larger brush and carefully, gradually, I will create a similar bend. And here is our final result. Click OK. So I told you about the face. Now let's talk about the parts of the face. For example, about the eyes. How can we work with this eye so that it's not so sad and so different from this eye? We go back to the liquify menu, and here, in order to raise your eyes, I suggest using the freezer tool. What is it for? We run the brush over those places that should remain motionless. That is, now I want only the eye to move, and all the other nearby parts of the face do not move. That is, so that the noise does not follow the eye when I move the eye. So that the left eye does not move when I move the side. That's it. I painted over everything. Now I take this tool. Let's take a bigger brush. For example, let's try to raise our eyes like this. I think it will be beautiful. Now let's erase that redness. And we can also enlarge this eye. Here we have a panel to work with parts of the face. For example, a panel for working with eyes. And this panel is responsible for the right eye. We can increase it, we can turn it a little, make it wider or narrower. I think this eyebrow is too high, so we can work with it too. Let's freeze all nearby objects. Let's take a brush that will be suitable for the size of the eyebrows. Let's omit it a little. For example, like this. We erase the excess, and we are looking, lo and behold, the size became even. The next point, let's work with the body. Here we already know how to act. Go to filters, liquify, and here I want to work on the curves. That is to make a more graceful curve in the neck area and more athletic toned lines in the arm area. First, let's work on the neck area. I use the freezer tool because if I just move my neck, then there is a chance that my chin will move as well, and we don't need it. Therefore, to begin with, I will paint over those areas that should remain stationary, and now let's work. Again, pay attention to the fact that I choose the size of the brush that is suitable for the size of the neck. And so I'm done with body plastic surgery, and we can look at the result before and after. Click OK. I want to show you another cool feature that can be done here. This hand now looks quite short, and I would like to make it a little longer. Short, the arm looks due to the fact that it is as it wears slightly behind, and I want to push it forward. How can this be done? Create a duplicate layer, click OK. Next, filters, camera raw filters. This panel gives us the opportunity to twist the picture in different directions, and if I twist it horizontally, then as you can see, the hand seems to turn around a little. And this is the effect that we need. Click OK. Next, create a mask and invert the mask, and now our task is to draw a new hand. We look before and after, and now that hand no longer looks as small as it did before. I have two photos, and here my eyes are closed, and here the face looks pretty, so I'm going to take the face from this photo and put it in place of the face with my eyes closed. So how are we going to do that? Take the lasso tool and cut out the area with the head. Next, press Command C or Ctrl C, go to another photo and press Command V or Ctrl V. Now our task is to implement this piece in the right place. Let's lower the opacity value to see where we should put this piece. Next, create a mask, and now we take a black 100% brush and erase the edges. It's turned out quite realistic. The only thing that gives us away is that the head is a little darker than the body. Let's fix it. Create a curves layer. Here I want to brighten my head a little. Let's click Create Clipping Mask so that these changes are applied only to the head. So with a slight movement of the hand, we changed the head in the photo, and then you ask me how to deal with such parts in the photo, and I will answer you, nothing new. You already know about all the methods and tools you need in order to cope with this area. Let's practice and do it together. The first thing we will do is cleanse, and what can be cleaned here? That's right, remove the folds, and then we'll see what happens. Let's create a duplicate layer, and here I want to work with the patch tool. I just highlight that area and clean it up gently. I also remove all other small dots and strips. This is what this area looks like after cleaning, and now our task is to remove the excess. To do this, I will use the selection tool. Now I just want to cut off this part to correct some points. We can take the curvature pen tool and fix the point that the thing look uneven. Next, I right-click and select Make Selection. OK, I have selected this area, and now I'm using the Stamp tool to paint over it. Ready. And now our task is to work with plastic, filter, liquefy. And now I'm going to work with that area. I have tweaked these lines and let's take a before and after look. Click OK, and the last step we can take here is frequency separation. Merge the layers. Let's use action. Press play and let's work on the bottom layer with the light shadow pattern. Use the mixer brush tool. And here I want to correct this line by working with the mixer brush tool. We look at the result before and after. There is a small gray spot, but we will fight with gray spots already at the stage of detailed color correction. And let's look at this part, how it has changed. It looks completely different. Let's take a look at this area. The lines are smoother, and we also removed some of the imperfections that were conspicuous. Now let's see what the photos look like in the retouching stage. Initially, after preparing for retouching and color correction, the photo looks like this. Next, we do the cleaning, remove all small spots and hairs. Here too, you can pay attention to the fact that we have removed the hair. At the same time, not completely, but only those hairs that attract too much attention. We removed the unnecessary moments and cleaned up. The next step is the dodge and burn retouching method. The skin is smooth and the texture is 100% preserved. And also you ask me how to remove bruises under the eyes. As you can see, there are some bruises under the eyes. There is some blackout in this area. We can do a great job with this with the dodge and burn retouching method, because a black eye is just a dark spot under the eye. And we simply expose dark spots using the dodge and burn retouching method. We are doing well. That is, we worked out this area and these spots, and the skin became absolutely smooth. Let's look at the following photo. This is what it looked like after processing in camera raw. Next, I do the cleaning. As you can see, I removed unnecessary moments. For example, this leg and this piece doesn't work at all in the frame. We can look at the armpit area and see that all spots of small spots are also now missing. Let's look at the face. As you can see, the folds are also gone here. Next, we'll look at the dodge and burn retouching method, and here the skin becomes smooth. Here, after the dodge and burn retouching method, a gray spot remained. In the lesson on detailed color correction, I will show in detail what to do with such spots so that they are invisible. When processing, you decide how much intensive retouching to do. Everyone has different preferences, and you can only slightly retouch, leaving the photo more natural. Or you can, like, for example, I remove all the superfluous. For example, in this form, I like the armpit much more than in this. But if you really want to leave it in some form, please leave it. Depends on who you are taking this photo for. For example, I'm doing the dodge and burn retouching method, and it can be reduced a bit. If you are doing for some customer for advertising photography and you have been prescribed in the terms of reference what should look perfect, then please everything will look perfect. Let's look at this photo. After being prepared in camera raw, it looked like this. Please note that there are some points on the face after acne. When working with cleaning, all black dots are gone. There were only some dark and light spots, which I successfully removed using the dodge and burn retouching method. The skin becomes smooth, the texture is 100% preserved. This is what the photo looked like after processing in camera raw. At the cleaning stage, I got rid of some small stains. After that, the dodge and burn retouching method was applied and the skin became smooth. Here I have a layer with frequency separation. Let's take a look at what exactly I did when working with frequency separation. I worked in the eye area, in the lip area, a little in the neck area. Thus, I gave the greatest softness to these areas and made the hair more combed. That is, they have become more evenly distributed along the edge. Let's move on to this photo. Here, as you can see, there are quite clearly highlighted folds on the face, and already at the first stage, at the cleaning stage, we removed these folds. They are thin, so they are perfectly removed using the patch tool. I can demonstrate. That's it. As you can see, we have removed the thin folds. After that, I applied the Dutch and retouching method. Thanks to him, the retouching has acquired a finished look. The photo is now ready for further detailed color correction. The next point, here we have folds on the dress, and already at the cleaning stage, these folds are gone. But at the same time, some bruises remain. With the Dutch and retouching method, we removed them. The next problem with this shot is that dark underwear shines through. We already removed this at the stage or detailed color correction using the coloring method, and I will teach you this in the next lesson. Let's move on to the last photo. Here we worked at the stage of cleaning with hair. As you may have guessed, the next step is the Dutch and retouching method. The skin became smooth. I also worked with the frequency separation method to soften some of the details. Let's see which ones. Not the whole skin, but only a few points. I walked exactly where the skin has a pronounced texture. It was possible not to do this. But then there was such a mood. I wanted to achieve the greatest softness. You see, the cheek, for example, remains intact, but here I used the mixer brush tool. Summing up the lesson on retouching, I can say that there are always imperfections of various kinds in photos. The first type, in certain points that we remove with the help of cleaning tools, some extra hair, dots. We clean all this with the help of cleaning tools, and only then we always work with the light and shadow pattern. And the Dutch and retouching method is the best way to do it. It's just needed in order to identify dark and light spots in the light shadow pattern. For example, a bright spot, here is a dark spot. We are doing a great job with that. I recommend it using frequency separation only when you want to soften some points, or if you want to work separately with some area that does not lend itself to other retouching options. For example, when we worked with lips, and also you can perfectly remove folds on the clothes with the frequency separation retouching method. Also, you can use frequency separation when you are in a hurry and need to quickly achieve smoothness and run on. You can also successfully use frequency separation if, for example, you retouch hundreds of photos for a clothing catalog and you have full-length models. Please can use frequency separation to retouch the skin. It will be great and quickly enough to smooth everything out. 3 minutes per photo and a good result will be achieved. Because in full-length photos, you do not have such a thing that the face is in the whole frame and all attention is riveted to it. But when you have such close portraits, I don't recommend using frequency separation on the entire surface of the skin because you will always get soap. There is a risk of losing texture and getting a not very high quality result. Attention to the teeth, how they change at each stage of processing. This is how the picture looked after preparing for retouching and then the cleaning stage. And that's how teeth change. That is, here we removed all the small points at the cleaning stage. Black and light. Let's move on. And the next stage was the Dutch and retouching method, where we did not touch the teeth in any way, so they did not change in any way. The next step was to use the mixer brush tool to make my teeth smoother. As you can see, they became smooth and all irregularities disappeared. Plus, I painted my teeth. We will learn how to dye teeth in the lesson on detailed color correction. The next point, there are also some irregularities on the teeth and we removed them with the help of plastics. Often there are also questions about how to work with lipstick on the lips or work with the arrows on the eyes when they are fuzzy. I can answer you that there are no special methods and tools here either. We use the same method and tools, the same scheme. And we always have the first stage in retouching is cleaning. And notice how the lips have changed after this stage. We have removed some small moments. And next, the Dutch-and-Barry retouching method, where we darkened some light spots and the lipstick on the lips became more even. Next, frequency separation. Notice that the lips have become smoother. And next is the stage of detailed color correction, where I specially painted the lips and they became more densely painted. We will learn this at the stage of detailed color correction. Then I worked a little more with curves. That is, darkened some light areas and lightened some dark spots, so the lips became even more even, and finally the photo looked like this. We can compare how the lips have changed. It should be understood that photo processing is always a step-by-step process, and each stage depends on the previous one. There is no such thing that we used any one method and the lips became perfect. No, they become perfect with each stage better and better. And let's take a look at how the arrows change. After preparing for retouching, the photo looks like this. Then comes the cleaning stage. And so we look at how the arrows change. Please note that at the cleaning stage, the arrows have become clear. That is, we removed some small light and dark spots, and at the edge of the arrow I worked with the stamp tool. Due to this, the arrows have become clearer. The next step is the Dodge and Burn retouching method, and here we see that due to the fact that I lightened the dark spots, the arrows became even clearer. The stage where I worked with the details of the makeup is the stage of detailed color correction. The arrows have become blacker and more expressive. And in the end, the photo looked like this. Let's see how it has changed. As you can see, the arrows have become completely different. And yes, photography also looks different. And now that we know and understand how to work with masks, I suggest you put this knowledge into practice. Let's see how it works with different photos in different situations. And this will be the third stage of processing. It's called detailed color correction. Here you will learn how to change a separate piece of the photo. For example, in this case, we will work with the color of the lips and not with the color of the entire photo. And let's see how it works. Click on this circle and we see different panels that will allow us to work with color. But we don't need all the panels. We only need solid color, curves, hue saturation and selective color. And that's it. Thanks to this panel, we can get any color correction we want. This works at the stages of detailed and final color correction. Now you and I will need a solid color panel. To begin with, we can choose any shade of the color we need here. In this case, a shade of red. Later, this shade can be adjusted. Next, click OK, and we see that automatically this new layer has a mask. We can now work with it and choose in which area of the frame this red color will be visible. But we also see that now this red color is homogeneous and without texture. It does not suit us. If we do an inversion of the mask and start drawing the lips, it will look completely unnatural. And in order for the result to be suitable, we need to switch this layer to the soft light mode. In this case, when we choose soft light, we now see the texture and we need it. But it does not suit us that this color is on the entire photo area. Therefore, we need to work with the mask. We highlight the mask, do the inversion by pressing Command-I on Mac or Ctrl-I on Windows. When the mask is black, we don't see the changes in the photo. As you can see, the layer is on, but there is no red color. When the layer is turned off, we also do not see it. Now we take a 100% white brush and start painting this red color in the soft light overlay mode on the lips. I do this without using the selection tools. I'm so comfortable because I use a graphic tablet. But if you suddenly went over the edge, you can always take a black brush and erase the excess. You can use the selection tools, but I work here without them. Note that when the brush has 0% stiffness and you choose a large brush size, the lines will have more fuzzy edges. And when you choose a small brush size, the lines will have clearer edges. So when you need a clear edge, you don't need to add rigidity, you just need to control the size. And this way you can draw all the details very carefully. If you made a mistake and need to get it back, you can just press Command Z or Ctrl Z on Windows. So the lips are painted and now they look very bright, but this is not the result that we need, because the lips now look artificial, as if they live a separate life. How to make them look natural, but still bright? We can simply reduce the opacity to a value at which the result will suit us. Then we can choose the right shade, and that's how it looks much better. Let's compare how the photo looks before and after. And this is how the mask helps us at the stage of detailed color correction to work with a separate fragment of a photo. And in this example, we made the lips more saturated and juicy. What I have just shown you, I call the coloring method, and the scope of this method is very wide. In this photo, I will show you how you can draw the details of makeup and make it more expressive. So to begin with, we again select the solid color panel and work with the skin tone. I choose a random shade of beige, select the soft light overlay mode, and do the inversion of the mask, press Command I or Ctrl I. And now we take a white brush. I'm already speeding up here. This is a familiar process for you. And most likely you have already guessed what we are going to do now. We just dye the skin color, and yes, you can paint not only the skin of the face but also the skin of the whole body. After we have colored the skin tone, we can often see that more work needs to be done on the shade, and we can go back to the solid color panel and adjust it. Usually our task is to make the skin tone a little more saturated, fresh, healthy, and less gray. I don't recommend changing the skin tone much, let it be close to natural. Don't try to draw a strong unnatural tan, and don't make the shade too orange. Let's leave this shade for now, and while the layers are not connected, we can return to this layer at any time and make changes. Next, click on this circle and select the solid color panel, but now we will work with the lip color. I choose a random light pink shade and then set the soft light mode and invert the mask again. We can make many layers, and each of them will be responsible for its own area in the photo. In this case, we are working with lips on this layer. We have a black mask. We take a 100% white brush and draw the lips. I remind you that if you go over the edge, you can take a black brush and erase the excess. Now I decrease the opacity value and choose the desired final shade. Now the shade is white and I want to make it more orange. Here our task is just to emphasize the color of the lips and make them more lush and expressive. I don't recommend radically changing the color, it always doesn't look natural. Next, we create a new layer with a solid color panel, select a random red shade, software light mode, and do an inversion of the mask. Take a white brush and let's work on its transparency, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and let's work on blush. The makeup artist applied blush quite intensively, and in real life they were clearly visible, but it's not noticeable in the photo. So let's make them more pink. So again, we took a transparent brush and lightly draw a pink shade on the cheeks. We look before, after, adjust the opacity value, we can adjust the final shade, and that's how I propose to leave it. As you already understand, it's possible to paint not only the skin and the details of the makeup. You can apply this method to any areas in the photo. For example, here we can paint a jacket. We take a new solid color layer, select the soft light overlay mode, take a white opacity brush and flow 100%, and we paint over the jacket. After that, we can work on the final shade, and so the jacket became more blue and bright. Now we can select all the layers by holding down the Shift key. Click on the first and the last layer, and then click on the button in the form of a folder, and all the layers are combined into a group. Now we can see how the photo has changed after all the work done. As you can see, the photo has become less gray and more colored and voluminous. And now we are ready to move on to the next photo. Using the example of this photo, I will show you what to do if gray spots remain on the skin after retouching. For example, when working with the dodge and burn method, I removed the hard shadow at the nose, and now we see a faded spot here. What are we going to do with him? It's very simple. Create an empty layer by clicking on plus. It doesn't change the photo in any way. We need it for subsequent work with a certain area in the photo. Now we take a pipette and select the area of skin closest to this faded spot. Next, we take a transparent brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and we just paint over this spot. I do a few neat strokes like an artist. Here the skin is slightly darker, so we can take a new shade with a pipette. And after that, we need to choose the color mode. And now our gray spot no longer exists. I recommend that you check the photo after retouching, and if you find such faded spots, color them immediately using this method. And only then proceed to other methods of detailed color correction, for example, skin coloring and makeup details. To consolidate your knowledge about this method, I suggest you practice additionally in this photo. There are small gray spots near the eyes, as well as small redness. They don't look bad, but I can show you how to remove them if you need it. So to work with gray spots, we create an empty layer, then use a pipette to take the desired color, select a transparent brush and paint over these spots. Setting the color overlay mode, and now there are no more gray spots. If necessary, we can lower the opacity volume. Next, we will work with the red spots. To do this, we use the same method. Create an empty layer and use a pipette to select a shade next to this red spot. Then, take a transparent brush and paint over the red spot. We set the color mode and notice that the red spot has disappeared, and move on to the next photo. In working with this photo, we will consider a slightly more complex method for detailed color correction. Here we will use new panels that have not been used before. Here our task is to work with a piece of the frame where the hair is dyed. It doesn't suit us that the hair is dyed with blue paint, and we will change this color. First, we need to bleach this blue hair. Let's do it. Click on the circle and select the Hue Saturation panel. Here I will work with a blue shade, and I reduce its saturation. And now we see that the blue color has become colorless throughout the photo. It does not suit us. Therefore, we do the inversion of the mask, and now with a 100% white brush, we draw this effect in the desired. Please note that when we run a brush through the hair of a different color, it does not change, because we removed this saturation only from the blue color. That's why I did not use the black and white panel. We look at the result and see that the hair is no longer blue, but they are also not colored enough. We can change that. To do this, I will use the curves panel, and here we choose the colors red, green and blue and turn and work with each of them. Choose the red color and take this tool. My wish for the result is that I want to make my hair more red. In fact, in life, the model really has red hair, but in the photo, it is not so noticeable. The same red color will go well with blue, and so I run my finger over the faded part where the blue color wasn't look for a suitable shade using all the colors of the curves panel, and now it's a suitable red shade that I want to work with. As you can see, this red tint is present in the whole photo. It does not suit us, so we will work with a mask. We select it and do an inversion. We take the transparent brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and draw a red shadow only on those curls that were blue. We touch them up and we can see how the result changes. We look before and after, we see that the faded curls have become more saturated and move on to the next step. Let's make all the hair redder now. To do this, you can make a new curves layer and research for the desired shade, but we don't need to waste time on this. Let's just copy this layer with the existing settings. I press Command C and Command V, and now we have a new curves layer with the color already configured. But the mask is also copied, and we see this red shade somewhere on the body. I will paint it completely black to remove it. Now the mask is completely black and we don't see any changes. We take a 100% white brush and draw the hair. After that, we can adjust the shade as well as reduce opacity. And we can make final adjustments to achieve curve to achieve the desired shade. We can combine all the layers into a group and look at the photos before and after. We removed the blue shade and dyed our hair a redder shade. The next photo, here we can work with a red spot and a blue one. To do this, we will use curves. Create a new curves layer and work with each color in turn. Here our task is to make sure that the red spot becomes flesh colored like skin. And choosing a shade, we strive for this. Don't immediately pick up the perfect shade, let it just be similar. Now we are doing an inversion, we don't see any changes. We take a white brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%. We work with a brush in the spot area. Paint it over with light movements. We see that it has changed and no longer looks red. We are going back to the color curves and can finally correct them. But here I see that the shade is already okay and the spot is just dark, and here we can work with a black and white curve and just lighten this spot. We can also return to the color curves if necessary, and we'll look at the result. We removed the red spot and the texture was not affected. If we removed it with the patch, we would get a very poor quality and dirty result, while the model would lose the natural folds and eyelashes for her face. Therefore, you should not do this. With such spots, you can only fight with the help of color curves of coloring. And let's work with gray spots. We can use colored curves or color this area through an empty layer, but I wanted to show you another way. We take a solid color layer, soft light overlay mode, do an inversion, take a white transparent brush and paint over the gray areas. In contrast to the coloring method on a blank layer, in this case, we can adjust the shade. That is, we can go back to the solid color panel and adjust the shade more precisely. And look at the before and after. I call it the concealer effect. In the following example, we see that after retouching, a blue spot remained on the cheek, and it clearly stands out. We will now work with him using colored curves to consolidate knowledge about this method. Create a new curves layer and work with the colors, choosing the right shade. We need to make this spot more red to match the color of blush. Next, we invert the mask and take a white transparent brush. And now, with light repetitive movements, we paint over the blue spot. Then we can finally work with the color curves, choosing the right shade. And we'll look at the photos before and after. And after we have color aligned this area, we can work further, color the skin tone, and make up details, draw the volume. Using this photo as an example, we'll study even more complex methods. Here our task is to work with the earring. We need to make it more shiny and expressive. To begin with, I suggest working with the white part of the earring. I want to change its shade as it looks yellowish now, although in real life it is white pearls. Before I dye the pearls, I will discolor them so that the extra yellow shade does not prevent us from reaching the desired shade. To do this, I create a black and white layer. Now the photo looks discolored. As you already understand, this effect does not suit us in the whole photo, so we invert the mask and swipe with the white 100% brush only on pearls. And we see that now the pearls have turned gray. I adjust the edges with a black brush in the right places. And now that the pearls are discolored, I suggest painting them in the desired shade. We create a solid color layer and I choose a light warm shade because the photo has a warm light and all the photos are in beige brown and golden shades. If the pearl is cold, then it will live separately from the whole photo and look unnatural. Blending mode, soft light. And now, in order not to redraw this pearl on the mask, we simply click Create Clip and Mask. Thus, the earring is dyed. We can go back to the solid color panel and choose any color, but I still do not recommend choosing any radically different color here, so I will leave it as a natural shade for pearls. Next, we can additionally create a curves layer and using a black and white curve, work with the brightness of pearls. And so that these changes are visible only on the pearls, we again select the Create Clip and Mask function and we see how the pearls become brighter and more noticeable. Too much. So I will lower the opacity volume. Next, we can combine all these layers into a group and look at the before and after photos. If it seems to us that the pearls stand out too much, we can reduce the opacity volume of the whole group. We can also work with the gold part of the earring and for this let's work with curves. With the help of a curve, I make the gold color lighter and shinier. Then I make an inversion and draw the effect of the curve with the 100% white brush only on a gold frame. Now we see that the frame has become lighter, brighter, shinier and more expressive. But I don't like its shade. Let's work with it too and use colored curves. I take turns with 3 colored curves and look for that golden shade that will look harmonious. And then I lower the opacity volume, see how it looks before and after. We can add this layer to the group, and again we'll look at how the urine has changed after processing. Using this photo as an example, I will show you how to calculate unnecessary shades and remove them. To do this, create a hue saturation layer. The photo may contain shades that are invisible to the eye, which affect the color. We cannot see them, but we need to remove them for color purity. For example, in this photo, there is blue in the white color of the background and linen. I found out this when I set the color blue to 100% saturation. And we don't need this blue color. It's not natural because in life underwear and background are white. We check other colors and see that there is also a pink color on the background, and we don't need it at all, and we can remove it. And then the background will become a purer gray color. Next, check the blue shades, and we see that they are not in the wrong places, only on trousers, but they also had this shade in life. Next, we check the green shades, and we also do not see them. Further, yellow. We see that yellow is present in the skin. This is okay, because there will always be a mixture of orange, red and yellow in the skin. We check the red color, we see that it is on the skin, and this is normal. Also, there is a little red color on the background, and by the mask from the background we can remove it. Let's learn how to do this by working with the color blue. It is present on the underwear, and it does not suit us. We choose the blue color and reduce its saturation. We don't need the trousers to turn gray either. Our task is to make the panties white. Therefore, we choose a mask and make an inversion. Then, for a change, we can work with the selection tools. Next, I use a 100% white brush and paint over this area. Click on the space outside the selection and the selection disappears. Now I can work with the edges where there are unpainted areas. Let's compare the result before and after. Now it looks much better. In this way, we can work with the other shades. For example, remove blue, pink and red from the background. In addition, we can control the shades of individual colors. Let's change the shade of red on the background. If I just choose red and change its shade, then the photo will also change the shade of skin, hair and clothes, because there is a red color here and it does not suit us. So first, let's select the background and only then create a new hue saturation layer. I am using the quick selection tool and I will work on the precision of the edges later. I also want to say that when I show you how to change the background color, draw blush or change the shade of jeans, this does not mean that these methods are suitable only for these tasks. For example, the method in which we draw blush can be useful when drawing shadows on the eyelids. Remember, in Photoshop, one method can always have many applications. I have highlighted the background and now let's work on the edges in the hair area. As you can see, there are no clear lines here. For a more detailed selection of this area, we go to the Select and Mask panel. Here it is even more noticeable how unevenly the edges are highlighted. Take this brush. Next, check that all the settings are like mine, and we run the brush along the edges and notice how they become softer. And after that, click OK. And now we create a hue saturation panel, select the red color, change its shade, and it changes exclusively in the background. See what the mask of this layer looks like. It was created automatically, and the black color indicates the area where the color does not change. Then we can continue to work with the background color using this mask. Now I will show you what it will look like. For example, we can create a solid color layer and paint this background in soft light blending mode, and click Create Clip-in Mask to apply this effect only to the background area. And now we can see that the background becomes cleaner and more saturated. Please note that everything is fine with the hair. They remain unchanged, and we do not see sharp and natural edges. Then we can continue to work with colored curves and continue to change the shade of this background. Again, click Create Clip-in Mask so that the changes on the curves layer are visible only the background. We can return to any panel and continue to finalize the desired shade. That is, you can manage each of these layers until they are flattened. You can also go back to the mask and try to change it. For example, select an additional area where all changes will be visible. This is suitable for you in case you notice unevenly painted edges and want to work with them. You will be able to do this by working with the mask. You can also create another layer, hue saturation, and add saturation, and don't forget to create clip-in mask. And we can see that the background is more saturated. You have many options for color correction here. Experiment, practice, choose which option you like best. Now let's see how you can work with the color of the whites of the eyes. Then principle of operation will be similar to how we worked with the pearl earring. We create a black and white layer and immediately invert the mask. And now we draw a black and white effect only the area of the whites of the eyes using a black mask with the 100% white brush. We have discolored this area. Next, create a solid color panel and select a random shade in the soft light blending mode and click Create Clip-in Mask. Now the proteins look unnatural. Let's fix it. I adjust the hue of the solid color layer and control the opacity volume. Our task is to find a natural shade without unnecessary additional colors. Now let's combine the layers into a group and see what the before and after photos look like. And now we see that we managed to do it. Rarely, but sometimes you can add brightness by working with curves. To do this, we create a layer of curves, move the curve slightly up and click Create Clip-in Mask. The changes in each layer are minor, but thanks to them, the whites of the eyes have become cleaner. You already know the staining method, and let's use this method here and paint the pupil of the eye. But first, notice that there is not one color here, but several. Therefore, we will create a couple of layers with different colors. Create the first layer of solid color and choose the orange color. Here I no longer repeat to you all the details of this method because it is already familiar too. I draw orange in one part of the pupil. Next, I create another layer with the blue color and draw it in another part of the pupil. I finally adjust the shade. In this case of pupils, by the way, we can use the overlay blending mode and it will give a more brilliant effect. Now we control the opacity value of these layers. We can also take a black brush and partially remove the orange and blue color. And now the eye looks completely different, despite the fact that the changes are completely insignificant. And what we'll do if we need to work with the shade of the teeth? That is, to make them whiter, but at the same time, one of our teeth stands out very much in color. Here I will not talk about retouching these teeth and how we can change their shape. Here we will talk specifically about color. To work with color, first create a black and white layer. We make an inversion of the mask. Take a white 100% brush and draw a black and white effect only on the teeth. And now we see that the teeth have become colorless, but this tooth no longer stands out due to color. Now it differs only in brightness. It is slightly darker than the rest of the teeth, and later we can just brighten it up, but now I would like to work on the shade of all the teeth. To do this, create a solid color layer, soft light blending mode, and click Create Clip and Mask. We select the desired shade. Additionally, we can create a curves layer and work with the colored curves. You can immediately click Create Clip and Mask, and I choose a shade that will harmoniously match the skin color. How we can combine all the layers into a group? Look at the result and compare the before and after options. I think here you can add some more shade through the solid color panel to make the teeth look more natural. So the result is already good, and finally let's work on this tooth. It still stands out due to its brightness. We create a curves layer, take the finger tool, and we highlight the tooth area. Next, we make an inversion of the mask and draw these changes only in the tooth area with the 100% white brush. Now this tooth no longer stands out, and in general the teeth are whiter. Using this photo as an example, I will show you how you can radically change the color, not just the shade. Let's work with the color of the skirt. In real life it was light pink, but in the photo the color looks rather dull and looks boring in the frame. For work, let's take the selection tool and use it to highlight the skirt. It's okay if you cannot immediately select the object evenly. Later you can work with the mask and paint the edges more clearly. The selection tool usually works well if the selected object is in contrast with the background. For example, in this area, the skirt is easy to distinguish because it's well separated from the background due to its color. But at the same time, the color of the skirt almost merges with the color of the skin, and in this area the tool may not work accurately enough. Therefore, we will need to pay special attention to such areas. After we have selected the object, we create a solid color layer and select a pink tint. For you, this stage is already familiar, and you probably remember that next we select the soft light blending mode, and then we can finally choose the right shade, and now the skirt has become light pink and looks absolutely natural. But what are we going to do if we want a different color altogether? We can discolor it and then paint it, as it was when working with pearls. But the real color of this skirt is quite dull, so we can try to drastically change its color right away. For example, we can make it yellow or purple. I will focus on the color blue. At the same time, it looks lilac. It's okay, because the blue color is mixed with the color of the skirt. Now let's work with the mask of this layer and adjust the edges. I selected the mask and use a white brush to 100% paint over the edges that I missed. Such parts cannot be created automatically, so we will have to accept that sometimes it's worth working manually. Now create a curves layer and use a black and white curve to control the density, contrast and brightness of that color. Click Create Clip and Mask and look at the changes. We can continue to adjust the curve and notice how the color becomes more saturated and bright. We can also use color curves and make the color bluer. As you can see, we can use both the solid color and curves panel here. For example, we used the solid color panel to create a new color and using curves to give it the desired shade. You can use these methods for a wide variety of photos. It does not matter if it's clothes or other items. Next, we will look at a few examples of photos where the skin has an uneven tone. For example, here the arm is darker than the leg. The shade seems to be the same, but the brightness is different. In such cases, we simply create a layer of curves, take a finger and lighten the arm area. We make an inversion of the mask, take a 100% white brush and paint over the dark area. And now the hand has become light and no longer differs in brightness from the leg. Now we can see that the arm is slightly more yellow than the legs. To change the hue of the hand, let's create a hue saturation layer. Choose yellow. We can check and see that there is a lot of yellow here. We can control the tone of yellow and make it greener or red. I will make it redder because on the legs it's yellow just with a more red tone. Plus I removed the saturation of the yellow color a little and ready. We make an inversion and draw these changes with a white 100% brush in the arm area. Now we can see that the yellow color in the arm area has become less saturated and green. Combine these layers into a group and look at the result before and after. Before treatment, the hand differed in tone from the legs, and now both the arm and legs have the same tone. And what to do if we have such a photo and there is a gray spot on the chest? Let's work with it and make the skin tone even. Create an empty layer, use a pipette to take a suitable shade from the nearest colored part of the breast. We take a white transparent brush and paint this gray area. Now create a mask to erase the excess beige color from the clothes. We need to make a selection and for this I will stand on the base layer so the selection tool will work as accurately as possible. We select the top and with a 100% black brush I return this top to its original appearance. And of course, the final touch, select the color blending mode. Now we see that there is no gray spot, but I would like to darken this area because it stands out due to its brightness and because of this, the skin tone still doesn't look uniform. I have highlighted the breast area and now I'm creating a curves layer, slightly darkening the light part of the breast. Yes, the neck also becomes dark. It doesn't suit us, so we take a black transparent brush. Even a 100% brush will suit us. Thus, we left the darkening only in the area of the light spot on the chest and now the skin tone has become more even. As you can see, it is not difficult at all and fast enough. If you cannot work fast yet, it's okay, you are learning and that's fine. The more you practice, the faster you will get used to all the methods and tools. The next common problem is red hands. To fix this problem, we can work with the hue saturation panel, but you are already familiar with it, so I suggest you get acquainted with another method. Create a duplicate layer and go to Camera Raw. Here on the color mixer panel there are 3 colors that are responsible for the color of the skin and we can work with their saturation, brightness and tone. Since the hands are red, I make the red color more orange and so that the orange is not so dark and saturated. I reduce its saturation and press OK. Now these changes are visible on the whole body, we don't need it, so we create a mask, do an inversion, take a white 100% brush and draw these changes only on the hand. That's it, the hands are no longer red. Next photo, and here you will practice drawing the details of the makeup before your eyes. On the shoot, the makeup artist used green eyeshadow, but green doesn't look as bright as in life. We will use the coloring method, but this time we will not have clear edges and we will use a transparent brush. In past examples, we often acted differently. We can immediately select the brush tool and reduce the opacity and flow. The principle of operation will be similar to the moment when you worked with blush. Imagine that you are an artist and you are kind of drawing, making a few strokes. And let's get started. Create a solid color layer, select a random green tint, set the blending mode to soft light, switch to a mask, do an inversion and take a white transparent brush. We make repeated light strokes in the eyelid area, and we see that the green color becomes more saturated and juicy. Don't worry if you go beyond the boundaries. You can take a 100% black brush and erase the extra moments. So now you can see that the color of the eyeshadows on the eyelids has become more attractive and expressive. And we go back to the solid color panel to pick up the final shade. As you can see, that shade can be completely different, more saturated or less. The shade that you choose should look harmonious with all other parts of the frame. That is why I insist that you study color theory and rely on this knowledge when color grading. In this photo, there is a gap in the makeup. The shadows on the left eye are not well shaded. To fix it, we could use cleaning tools, but in this case, the result is not very high quality. And I will show you how to make this area look so natural, as if no one worked with it in Photoshop. And we will use the Diane method again. We create a solid color layer, select a random pink color, a soft light blending mode. Then we invert the mask, and now we just fill in these gaps. 100% brush is not suitable, so we reduce the volume of opacity and flow, and we start drawing. As you can see, the spot has become pink, but at the same time it stands out due to its brightness. We will be able to deal with this easily with the dodge and burn retouching method. Create a curves layer and create a darkening in the area of the bright spot. We make an inversion of the mask and paint over this bright spot with a white transparent brush. Notice how I work with the brush. I don't click on the brush and don't draw it in a solid line as happens when children decorate something in a coloring book. I do several strokes in the same place. And now the stain has become invisible and the shadows look shaded. Let's take a look at the before and after result. It looks great and we can move on. Next, let's work with arrows before our eyes. I will show you how we can make them clearer and more expressive. In the lesson on retouching, I showed you how the arrows become more even when working with the cleaning tools. But after that, the lines of the arrows are still not bright and black enough. We will fix it now. Create an empty layer. Next, take a black brush, opacity 16, flow 24, and draw these arrows. Our task is to make the edges of the arrows clear. Note that I don't use such a large brush, because the larger the brush, the less sharp its edges. I use a very small brush and thanks to this I managed to make the edge of the arrow clear. Now the arrows look black, but unnatural. We will not leave it like that. Select the overlay blending mode and slightly reduce the opacity to such a volume at which the arrows will look natural. And now we can look at the final result. The arrows have become blacker and the look is more expressive. Now let's see how you can draw highlights and make them brighter. You already know what to do. To begin with, we will discolor them. Then paint and make it a little brighter. Let's practice together. Create a black and white layer, invert the mask, take a 100% white brush, and draw a black and white effect only in the area of the beads. Done. Now we can start coloring. Create a solid color layer. I want to pick up some more light pink shade, and the blending mode is soft light. And click Create Clip and Mask so that the coloring is visible only where the black and white effect was previously drawn. Now let's work on naturalness. I changed the shade a little and as you can see the beads can be very different. But most importantly, they will no longer be as colorless and inconspicuous as in the beginning. Next, we can create a curves layer and continue to control the brightness of these beads, but always keep it natural. These bits should look like they do in life. For example, I think these settings are absolutely harmonious and everything looks great. And now about the highlights. Create an empty layer, and here the principle of operation will be the same as when working with black arrows, but the brush will not be black, but white. There is an interesting point here. We can work not only with an ordinary brush as we are used to. We can also use this brush and make it more rigid. It is suitable for clear small highlights, for example, as on the nose. To work, set the opacity 15% and flow 25% and paint with the brush where there are these clear little highlights. For large highlights with fuzzy edges, we can use the softest brush possible. The main thing is not to draw a glare where there is none. You only need to work with a brush where this highlights and to preserve the anatomy of the face. Next, select the overlay blending mode and can reduce the opacity volume. I think the flare looks too bright on the nose, so I create a mask and use a black brush with about the same settings, slightly erase the excess. We are done, and now we can look at the result before and after. And let's consolidate this knowledge and work with the glare in this photo. We create a blank layer, we take a white brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%. Now our brush is soft, so we can work with large fuzzy highlights. I make a few light strokes over the highlights. Next, we can take a stiffer brush with sharp edges and draw small highlights with sharp edges. We look at the result before and after. We can slightly reduce the opacity volume, and now we see how minor changes have made the picture a little more voluminous. Next, let's talk about volume. For the first method, we need a new channel mixer layer, and here we immediately check the monochrome box, then select the soft light blending mode. I immediately lower the opacity volume, and as you can see, the picture has become more voluminous. I don't recommend leaving it that way, therefore we use a mask. We make an inversion of the mask and draw this volume with a white transparent brush with light movements. I brush several times in the same places. Thanks to this method, we not only get volume, but also the skin becomes more textured. And that's what it looks like. We look before and after. The skin has become more shiny, the texture is more noticeable, and the picture itself is more voluminous. Sometimes you may encounter such a problem that the photo does not look voluminous at all due to poor light in the shooting. For example, here the light is completely flat, and we can draw highlights or use a channel mixer. But this in this case will not be enough. In addition, these methods work well only if you already have volume and glare in the photo, so additionally we can use curves. Create a layer of curves, take the finger tool, and select the protruding part of the face on which there could be light. These are usually the cheekbones, the center of the forehead, nose, chin. Lighten these parts slightly. We make an inversion of the mask. Take a white transparent brush and draw this light in those areas where it could be. These are just the protruding parts of the face. Don't forget to work with your body as well. And now you can see how the picture has become more voluminous and the light is no longer so flat. Then we can take another curve and work with the dark curve. Here I'm already working with the non-protruding parts of the face and body. Now let's combine the layers into a group, and when comparing, we see a fairly pronounced volume. I lower the opacity volume a bit, and now the volume looks completely natural. You can draw such a volume not only on the face but also on the body, and not only on the body but everywhere you need it. It can be absolutely any photos, landscapes, objects, it doesn't matter. If you have a task to make some elements lighter, some darker, and thereby create volume, you can use this method. As well as a method with the channel mixer and a method for drawing highlights, I insist that you achieve volume in different ways and not just move the curve in some way. It's pretty stupid and a good volume won't work that way. Learn to see the light parts in the photo and make them more expressive. Now let's draw the volume on the body using curves. I created a layer with a light curve. Take a white transparent brush, and I'm less detailed about each step because you already know how it works. Now it's important for me to just show you how this method will work with the body. I run the brush over the highlights. This is the result we got. Next I create another curves layer, but this time for darkening. We make an inversion of the mask, take a white transparent brush, and work with dark areas. Let's combine the layer into a group, look at the result before and after, and we can slightly reduce the opacity volume. And we move on to the last stage in the processing, which is the final color correction. Usually at this stage the photo already looks very good because we have done the main 3 stages of processing. We have done development, retouching, and detailed color correction. As you can see, it's already very nice. Let's compare it with the raw file and see how the photo has changed after the 3 steps we did. As you can see, everything is already very pretty, and we need the final color correction stage for minimal actions that will give the shot a finished look. We are going to work on making final balance of light and shadow and then work with the shades in the light and dark areas. It's important to understand that at this stage we work with the frame completely. We don't use masks here, unlike the previous 2 stages. In the final color correction stage, you can use actions, presets if you need to, but I would like you to get any color you want using your own settings without other people's presets and other people's actions. This is the most conscious approach to processing. Thanks to it, you will get a clean and high quality result. In this lesson, you will get all the knowledge you need for this. And in the second part of this lesson, I will show you how to repeat a color from reference. Usually when we look at photos that we like, we see in them a special harmony of shades and the color in these photos looks finished, as if these photos have exactly the processing that they need. In other words, no other processing will work for these pictures. It's exactly as it should be. This is exactly the result we are striving for in the processing. So, at this stage of final color correction, we will need only 2 panels for work. In order to make any desired color, we use the curves panel and the selective color panel. That's it. We don't need anything else. Thanks to just 2 panels, you can achieve any desired color correction and harmony of shades. Now, in the example of this frame, I will show you what can happen at the stage of final color correction, and then I will tell you in more detail about the principle of curves, because this is the most important tool for color correction in Photoshop. In the end, you will have 2 important skills. The first skill is the ability to work with the possibilities of Photoshop. This knowledge I give you through these lessons. The second skill is understanding the theory of color correction. This knowledge you get from my lecture on color theory. Bottom line, based on the knowledge of color theory, you will be able to make the right decisions for action in processing, and thanks to the knowledge of tools in Photoshop, you will be able to act and achieve the desired result. So, first of all, what can we do with this picture? Let's take a look. I like to start the final color correction by using curves to finish the balance of light and shadow right away. Here I am fine with the photo being soft, but I would like to add contrast and expression in the shadows. I will achieve this by working with curves. A curve is a line that goes from a black point to a white point. And if we work with the curve in the light range, the light areas in the photo change. If we work with the curve in the dark range, the dark areas change. We will talk about this in more detail later. Now let's see how the final color correction stage usually looks in practice. I slightly brightened the light areas, and I also want to darken the dark areas a little bit and lighten the mid-tones to give expression to the skin and make it more saturated. These are the settings that we are going to use for the skin. It looks more contrasty and more expressive, less gray. And on white background you can see that very well. But we have not lost the softness. What else can we do? I would also add saturation here because it seems that it will not be super flowers here, just a little bit. And then I would work with selective color correction and show the highlights right away. If you have some highlights or light areas which can create such volume, then please, you can use this scale, but carefully. Next, what else can we do? I said about the shades in the light and dark areas. This can be done very easily and simply by working with selective color correction, or you can do it with curves. But I will tell you about it later. First, let's see how it works in selective color correction. I rely on my visual experience and add a little more pink to the highlights, a little more cool pink color. I like the way it looks, like this for example. And the black shades, again, based on my visual experience, I add more light green. I have noticed that I often strive for this kind of color correction where there is a contrast of pink and light green. If you watch my lecture on color theory, you will know that on the color wheel, pink is opposite to light green. They are considered to be contrasting in relation to each other, so this combination will always be harmonious during color correction. Also, on a color circle, green with red perfectly combines yellow with violet and blue with orange. If we add yellow in white areas, violet in dark areas, we will get harmony. So this knowledge can be used when working with color correction. As a result, you have two options for working with shades. In the first variant, you can change the shades of the main colors. For example, you have a blue sky and green grass on the photo, and you adjust their shades so that the green color of the grass blends nicely with the sky shade. The second option, you can add a light shade in light and dark black and white areas, and this action will give a finished look to the shot. For example, here the changes are insignificant, but it looks like we have added the right final touch to the photo. We can group these all together and see what happens. This is what it looks like. With selective color correction, you can work on the tones in the highlights and shadows. Now let's remove the selective color correction layer. Next, I want to show you the gradient map. Here we can also work with shades in the light and dark areas. For it, we use the gradient map. Let's choose a pinkish hue and let's try to change it. I click OK and do an inversion so I can see what's going on. Here we have a scale from light to dark, and here we can set any color. It's going to appear in the light areas of the frame. And here we can set a color to appear in the darkest parts of the frame. And here we can set some color to appear in the medium gray parts of the frame. And here we are going to choose a color in the light areas. Let's set it to some sort of pinkish hue in the darker areas. Let's set it to green again, for example, like this. I want more pink and less green, so I'm going to set it like this. Click OK and immediately we will change the blending mode. You can use soft light or hard light. They are the most suitable for these gradient map experiments. And now we have added the final tint to this photo. We have got a similar result as we did with selective color correction. Experiment with the gradient map, see what happens with different blending modes with the different colors. Here, for example, now I want to try to add some extra color to the mid-light areas. I click in the middle. White color is automatically added and immediately the picture changes, but I want to add some warm hue. Something between an orange-red hue, like this. And here we see how the picture changes if we change the shade. Before and after. This is how you can use a gradient map to add additional shades to the light and dark areas of your photo. And your photo will have that unique harmonious color correction. As you can see, now we have put a mark on the light part of the scale and it's pink. In the photo, we can see this pink tint in the light parts of it. If we change the color of this mark, it will also change the tint in the light part of the photo. While the layers are not merged, at any moment we can return to these settings and change the shade. Next, when working with the final color correction, you can use my presets. They are included in the package. Download them and upload them following the instructions. Create a duplicate layer, click OK, and go to Camera Raw Filter. Choose a preset that we like. I want to choose this preset and slightly change it because the color is too orange, but I believe in it. Then we remove the detail, sharpening and grain effects because we don't need it here. There is enough sharpness here, and I want to remove the extra orange color. I also want to work on the balance of light and shadow. So here we go, click OK. We have now added a preset to the photo, we have changed it a little bit, and the changes from that preset are now on this layer. You can switch it on and off to see the difference. I like this shade, but it looks too saturated, so I just lower the opacity volume, and now this preset doesn't look so crazy anymore, and there is a slightly more interesting, contrasty shade in the photo. This is how I recommend using presets. I don't recommend that you use them at the beginning of processing, as we have already decided we don't use presets at the beginning of processing. If you really want to use them, then please feel free to do so in the way I recommend and only at the final color correction stage. What else can be done at the final color correction stage? You can add sharpening. Create a duplicate layer, click OK, filter, high pass, and choose a volume where you can see the outlines of the face. 3.5 is quite normal, we get such a gray picture with outlines of the face. That's okay. We set the blending mode to soft light, and now we can see how the sharpening came out. If you don't need sharpening on the whole photo, then we remember what to do from the point about detailed color correction. We just create a mask, press Command I. We take a white brush on the black mask and draw this sharpness where we need it. For example, just on the skin. And here we see what it looks like. Next, we can add noise. I'm going to create a duplicate layer. Okay. Now I'm going to show you two ways to add noise. The first option is to do it with the add noise and click OK. And then we are gonna do it with the filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and blur that noise, and then we have a soft, beautiful noise. It looks very good when the noise is soft. You can remove the opacity if necessary. This kind of noise always looks very good. It's very similar to film noise. It's not pretty when the noise is blurred. If we look at how it looks without it, we can see that there is a sharp, strange effect in the photo, and it does not make the photo look better. How else can we make noise? We click Duplicate Layer, OK, and go to Filter, Camera Raw Effects, and here we add noise using grain. Again, here it comes out very fine and sharp, but we can increase the noise. Here we go. There you go. We have got a nice soft noise. This noise looks cool in reportage photos. If you, for example, retouch a wedding photo and the final touch is this grain, it will look absolutely perfect and atmospheric, as if it were a film. And now I'm going to tell you an important point that you need to know about during the final color correction stage. In the preparatory stage of retouching, I told you how you can create a preset and apply it to all your other photos. This gives you the ability to do the processing faster, and in the pre-retouching stage, you can make the process automatic, meaning you did all the color on one photo and then just copy those presets to all the other photos. This way you have automated the process, and the processing in the preparation stage can take as little as 5 minutes. In other words, you only spend time on the color for one photo, and all the other photos got that color automatically. At the stage of retouching and detailed color correction, we cannot automate the process like that, because everything is done manually there and on certain parts of the photo. But we can automate the process at the stage of final color correction. And here I want to tell you about working with actions, how to create them and how to apply them to all photos. For this purpose, I created a copy of this frame to show you how this action will work. How do we record an action? We go to the panel actions, click on the plus. You can call it something. I prefer to leave it without a name. We click record. You get a red circle. This means that from now on, all the actions you will do in relation to this photo will be recorded in the action. Then you press stop, and you will have an action that you can use for the rest of your photos. Let's do it. I work with curves. I make changes on purpose. Let's say we use preset. I won't try too hard. The most important thing for me is to show you how actions work. Then I will do some selective color correction. So the photo has changed and we have merged the layers. You can leave them in case you want to change the settings in these layers. If you don't want to do that, then merge the layers. Either way, later on in the history panel, you can go back a few steps. So we have done the actions to modify the photo. We go to actions. The red circle tells us that the actions are being recorded. Here is our action 17. Here is all the actions we have done, and we press stop on the square. The recording is over. From now on, if we do any new actions with this photo, they won't be recorded in the action. Now let's use our new action for another photo. Select this action, go to the other photo and press play. And now we have got all the actions running automatically. The action has done all the actions and we can see them in the history. We can also in the history step back and see the layers. We can go to the last layer, we can see before and after, and we can compare the result with the previous photo. We have this color here and this photo has the same color. So we recorded an action with color settings on this photo. And then we automatically applied these settings via action to the second photo. You can do this with all photos. How else can you do it? For example, you have two photos open and you don't want to manually apply an action to each photo. Imagine you have 10 photos and you need to press play on each one. To avoid this and make the process even more automated, we can click File, Automate, Batch. Select action 17, sources, opened files, and click OK. Now this action will automatically apply to all open photos in Photoshop. We have two photos open. Now this function automatically applies this action automatically. And what happens? This action automatically applied to all the photos. But how do we save all these photos at once? Let's say we don't have two, but 10 or 20. How do we take them and save them all at once? Firstly, you can record the moment of saving and even closing at the action. And it will save and close them. Or you can automate the process. We go to Scripts, Image Processor, use Open Images, tick the box, Save, select Folder. I will choose on the desktop and here we choose where to save. Next, we select Quality 12, save as JPEG. If you need to save in another format, you can do it. I'm going to save as JPEG and click Run. And finally, we have saved the pictures. Let's see here we have a new folder 4 and these pictures are saved here. Use this method if you need to save all the pictures at once rather than one at a time. And the last interesting thing you can do during the final color correction, this is the texture mapping. Let me show you how it works. I have some scan textures. I bought them on the BLK market site. There are not only scan textures, but also other different interesting ones. For example, I have some more like these with noises and different scuffs, and I'm going to show you how to use them. We just transfer the texture onto the photo. We automatically create an additional layer with this texture and we can further transfer into the blending mode, lighten. And now we have these scuffs on the photo. That is, when working with textures, we work with blending modes. We will now try to take a scan texture and let's see what blend mode we can use here. Often we can use lighten, screen is also good. We can use color dodge, and soft light looks very good. We can control the opacity value. We can also add color through the solid color panel. You can, for example, add a pinkish tint to this texture in soft light blending mode, or use multiply shades using the gradient map. And now I'm ready to tell you as much as possible about how curves work. Curves is the main tool for making any color correction, and I choose this photo for practice. Here are enough light and dark areas, and I will do well to learn curves and the principle of its work. So we take the curves panel, and now I'm going to tell you about it. A curve is a line that goes from a black point to a white point, and we can see that here. Here's the black dot, it goes to the white dot, and here's the black dot, it also goes to the white dot. What does that mean? That the dark spots in the photo, for example the suit, are located approximately in this area, and you can see that in the graph. I moved the curve in this area and we have a big change in the brightness of the dark suit and almost no change in the brightness of the light background. In this part, all the light areas are concentrated, and if I move the curve in this place, we will change the light areas of the photo, such as the background. To keep the experiment clean, let's set 3 points, so that the curve doesn't move at these points but stands still. For example, I move the curve in the light part and only the light parts of the photo change noticeably. If these points stand still and here the curve doesn't move, but moves only in the dark range, then only the dark shades change on the photo, you know. So if we need to control the brightness of the dark areas in the photo, we look at where we have the dark areas on this graph. They are here, so we move the point over here and manipulate the curves from this location. The brightness of the dark areas will change, and with that the color, the hue, the mood, the contrast will change slightly. And by manipulating all these points on the curve, which can be several, we will achieve a balance of light and shadow in this photo. And in this shot, I suggest we create a brighter contrast. To do that, let's reset the 3 points. And to start with, I would like to brighten the light areas. Again, the curve is aligned from black to white. So, for example, this point here is responsible for the black areas of the photo. We can make them lighter by moving this point up, or darker by moving it down. And this is where the dark gray areas are concentrated, and they will change. It's a little bit lighter here, medium gray. Here it's even lighter, light gray, and here it's completely white. The white areas will get darker if we move the point this way, or get brighter if they move the point this way. And all the other parts of the photo, as you can see, remain the same. So let's continue with the contrast. I'm controlling the light areas now. I want to make the background lighter, and I want to make the darker areas even darker. The middle areas, I want to lighten them up a little bit more. Okay, I can add some dots if I need to. Contrast is good, but we need to avoid shadow failure, so we cannot do it like this. Because you will get a shadow gap, we need to keep the texture of the suit visible and not get lost in the highlights or the shadows. For example, we make the shot lighter, but the breasts don't get exposed, just like the face and the texture of the corset. And here we are looking at what we have got. The picture is more colorful, more contrast, and we achieved this with the help of curves. The light is initially harsh, contrasty, and this kind of harsh, colorful, bright, colorful processing really fits here. How else could we work with curves? Let's say, for example, if we wanted to achieve a more delicate balance in light and shadow, we would on the contrary make the highlights more muted and darker areas lighter, like this. And so our picture became less contrasty, less colorful, which also of course suits in general. But I think that the first version, where it was more contrasty, suits us better. By the way, you can also work a little bit differently. I recreated the curve, and here you can use the finger tool instead of placing the points yourself. We draw downwards in the selected area of the frame, and you can see the scale has gone down to the highlights. And the point has been automatically created. You can, for example, take a dark area and swipe upwards, and the point is created where you want it to be. So we can change the brightness. We can also control areas with medium brightness. You see, we have already got 3 points created automatically, and this is how the frame has changed after these sections. We can try again to make a stronger contrast. We take the curves and pull up the white areas, the light areas, dark down a little bit, light up a little bit. Done. And look at the before and after. It's a minor change here, but it's made the frame look complete, which means it's more contrasty, it's more colorful, and it's look amazing, and it's very high quality. And with the help of this tool, we have created 2 points, thanks to which we got this contrast. Next, I will tell you about color curves, how you can use them to make the final color correction and give your shot a finished look. Let's choose the first color at once. It's red. And immediately the question, what is the difference between color curves and black and white curves? The trick is that here too there is a line from black to white, from dark to light. And in this area, we can work with dark areas, and here with light areas. But at the moment, when we move the curve in the light areas, the picture will not get lighter as it was when working with black and white curves. Also, if we darken the dark areas, they will not be darkened. When working with color curves, we will not lighten or darken the picture. We are going to get a new hue. And what are those hues? Here we see that here we have dark areas of the photo, and here we have light areas. Let's put 3 points in these areas, and I will show you what's going on to happen. We can move a point in the dark areas and see what happens to the dark hues. It takes on a new color. Green if we lower the curve, and red if we raise it. Let's leave it like that. At the same time, if we move the curve in the light part, the light areas of the photo may take on a reddish or greenish hue. And so it's with any area of the photo, a red curve will give a red or green tint to the area we select by putting a point on the curve. We can also remove these dots and not put them manually, but use the finger tool. We can select the lightest spot in the photo, click on it, and give it a new shade. For example, make it more reddish, but red is not as obvious. Here is green. Let's keep it green. Why not? Next, we can click on the darkest area and give it a new shade as well. Then we can click on some of the middle areas like the face, and then we can work with the tint in the medium brightness areas. That's how it works. Next, let's remove these points and look at the curves in a different color. For example, next we have a green colored panel, and here we can give the light background a more pinkish hue by taking the curve down a little bit in the light areas. On the contrary, we can give the dark hue a more greenish color. That we can work with the medium brightness details. This is how by clicking on different parts of the photos you can shape your new hue. Usually when you are aiming for a particular color, you just adjust these settings to your preferences, to your idea, or to a reference you have. The most important thing is to make sure that you don't have shadow gaps or overlighting, because when you work with curves, this can happen. Make sure that you keep all the texture visible and that you don't get a result like this. It's pretty messy and of poor quality. I ended up going with this option. I lowered the opacity value a bit, and this is what the curves look like. It is a red curve and a green curve and a blue curve. Let's see before and after. As you can see, by working with colored curves, we can add character to the photo. Next, I want to say a few words about how to make a nice black and white effect. And to start with, we create a black and white layer. The picture becomes black and white. Here we can control the settings and change them as we like. Only the colors that are in the photo will change. That is, if we had a red shade in the photo, we can make it lighter or darker. We don't have so many other shades here. There is minimal amount of blue tint in the white colors, so we can see how it changes and we can make it brighter. And then to control the contrast, we create a curves layer. We work with the light and dark areas. We can also work with the midtones and stop at about this result. Let's merge these layers into a group and compare the before and after variants. Now that you have learned all 5 processing steps, I have a nice bonus for you. This is the answer to the question of how to repeat color correction from a reference, how to make your photo have the same color as the photo you like. And this is where I want to remind you of an important rule without which nothing will work. You should always remember that your photo should be taken with the same lighting conditions as your reference. That is, if this photo has soft and pleasant light from the window, then your photo should also have soft and pleasant light from the window. If the reference has bright sunlight, then the photo you are going to repeat the color correction on should also have the same bright sunny, contrasty light with harsh shadows. This is probably the only rule you should stick to, and it guarantees a definite success. I also want to mention separately that the process of preparing color from reference is a very cool and useful practice, thanks to which you can greatly improve your skill in color correction. And it's much more effective than doing color by eye and just spinning all these settings. Because when you are just randomly tweaking all the settings one by one, you are always your own personal color. There is always something common in your color correction, something personally yours, and yet it's not a fact that this color is harmonious or of high quality. In general, with this approach to your work, your result will always depend on your visual experience. In other words, it will be a color made on the basis of your personal perception. But when you make a color by the method of repetition, that is, when you repeat a color from references, your visual experience doesn't affect the result, you just look, analyze, and repeat this color. At the same time, you may mentally resist unfamiliar settings and method of such color correction and at some point even be surprised by the result. But if you have taken a good reference with harmonious color correction, you will probably get a cool result at the end of the work. At the same time, you will understand that you wouldn't have found such a color on your own, but the experience will begin and thus you will learn how to get the color you like when processing. And how? Let's get to practice. I took this photo and on it we will do the same color correction as here. This photo suits us because it was taken with the same light as this photo. And now let me remind you of 3 important points that we will analyze for successful color reproduction. First, we'll look at the degree of contrast. That is the balance of light and shadow, and we will replicate that contrast in our photo. Second, we'll look at what shades there are in the primary colors. For example, there is a red color here, and here it's more pink, and here it's more orange. So we are going to make this shade of the wall more orange so that it looks like this color. We will also look at the shades of the clothes. Here the blue is too bright, the denim looks too new, I want to make it more vintage, more filmic. The third point, we are looking at the shades in the highlights and in the darks. As I told you before, there is never just light or just dark. There is always some extra subtle shades, and here I can assume that in the light areas there is a pinkish shade and in the dark areas a greenish shade. That's the same result we are going to achieve in our photo. And let's get started. As I said, the first thing we are going to do is a similar balance of light and shadow. For this task, we need these settings. I'm going to make some of the highlights darker, and now we can see that the skin texture in this part of the face is more visible. I also reduced the amount of white color and I lightened the shadows slightly. Let's take a look at the before and after result. As you can see, I made the picture less contrasty, it became softer. This picture is just as soft, and that's what we were aiming for with this photo. Next, I would like to add saturation to make it easier to work with color, and I'm going to add just a little bit. Plus, we can see that now our photo is less saturated than the reference, so we can afford to add a little saturation. If we need to, we'll add more later, but this value is enough to start with, and now the photo is ready to be opened in Photoshop and move on to the next stages of color correction. Click open. So we have done the first step, we have repeated the contrast, we have made it the same as on the reference. And the next step we will do is to change the shade of red. Red is present in the background and in the clothing, and here we see that it's more pink, and on the reference it's more orange. Let's work with that. Create a hue saturation layer. Here we'll talk less about methods and tools because you already know all the methods and tools, you have learned them during all 5 stages of processing. So here I'm only talking about the principle of repeating color correction from the reference. And here I want to change the shade of red. For this I have selected the hue saturation panel. Here we are going to select the red color and make it a more orange color. We can see that the color has turned out dirty. Here it's cleaner and brighter, so we'll work on the brightness and purity of this color as well. Let's add saturation to this color. Next, we see that in addition to the background, we have changed the color of the hair and face, because the red color is also present in these parts of the photo. We need the red color to change only on the background, so we do a mask conversion. Press Command-I and use a white 100% brush to draw these changes only in the background area. Next, we can work on the brightness of the background. For this, we create a curves layer. Take the finger tool and lighten the background, like this. And you can also tighten the curves in this area to make the background more saturated. And what we are seeing now is that these changes are visible through the entire area of the photo. We don't want that. We want just the background to be bright. So here we click Create Clip Mask. And we can see that the background is brighter, but the model hasn't changed in any way. And that's what we want. Next, we see that the reference has side light, possibly from a window. On our photo, there is no such effect, so I suggest to create it. create another curves layer and lighten this part. Next, I take a black 100% brush and erase this light effect on the right side. We can go back to the curves panel and work with this curve to achieve the desired effect. Most of the time I repeat a color, I just look at the reference and analyze it based on the three parameters that we have discussed. These are the balance of light and shadow, the shading in the primary colors, and the shading in the black and white areas. Let's go next. Down here the background is not orange enough, I would like to change that. Create another hue saturation layer, take the red color again and move it to the right to get the orange hue. Next, I press Command I to do a mask conversion. I take a white 100% brush and work in this area. So we have made the bottom on the background more orange. Notice we have done the background, but we haven't changed the red jacket in any way, and it's a really treacherous shade. Let's go back to the first layer where we changed the shade of red and brush over the jacket to make it less pink. And we can go back to the last layer where we also worked with the shade of red, and we can work the color of the jacket on this layer too. It ended up being more orange, like the background. Next, I would like to work with the color of the clothes. Right now, the blue looks very bright and new. I want it to become more vintage. For this, I create another hue saturation layer, and here we will work with the blue and blue color. First, I work with the hue. I want it to be less blue and less purple, even more so. I want it to become more blue, maybe even more green. So I move in this scale to the left, reducing saturation and adding brightness. Next is blue. Here I'm also working with the hue, moving it a little to the left and lowering the saturation and lowering the brightness a little bit too. This kind of vintage effect fits the mood of this color correction well, so we will leave it at that. The third step is to work with the tints in the natural colors. We create a selective color layer, and here we work with the white color to start with. I lighten the highlights and highlight slightly. We will use the black color scale to do this. And now we can check how it looks before and after. Next, I want to add a little bit of cool tint to the highlights because it's definitely present here. We can check this by taking the eyedropper tool and checking what tint is present in the white colors. There is a blue tint here, we can repeat that. Then we can check what shade is present on the skin. And we see that there is an orange tint here, plus a warm pinkish tint. And we can replicate that as well. As we work with these settings, we can add cooler and warmer shades to the highlights. I suggest adding warmer shades here, plus some pink working with this scale. Next, we can work with the shades in the darker areas. Let's believe what shades are present in the dark areas. Again, we will use the dropper and we can see that there is a greenish tint here, and we can replicate that by selectively correcting the black border with the black color. We can add a green tint in the darker areas using this scale here. I would also add black for contrast. I use this scale and move the black to the right. We ended up adding a pinkish tint to the light areas, and also I added a greenish tint to the black areas. But we can see that the face in this photo looks paler and pinker, not at all like it does here. Let's fix that and work with natural colors. Here with the yellow scale, we can add a little more yellow tint. Plus I want to add a little bit of blue in the black areas because I think that's what's missing. Next, I want to work with curves because the skin has more texture here, and it's not as light as in our photo, so I'm creating a curves layer for that. Reduce the brightness of skin. Next, I lift the curve slightly in the shadow area to keep the softness of the picture, plus raise the curve in this area. Next, I want to work with the color curves, taking the blue shade. When I work with the color curves, when repeating a color, I just look at the reference and try to create something similar. I look at how the shades look in the dark and light areas, look at the contrast and try to replicate that. For example, working with the blue curve, I lower it a little bit in the shadows, and that gives me the most warmth in the dark areas. Then I work on the light areas, and that's where I get the most coolness, and so I work with all three color curves using this tool. Let's look at the result after working with the color curves. Let me show you how the curves have changed. Here we see the curve that is responsible for the balance of light and shadow. Next, this is what the red curve looks like, and green and blue. I set all the points using this tool. I just looked at how the shades look on the reference and achieved the same result here. Next, I think there is a kind of pinkish haze on the reference and I want to replicate it. To do this, I create a new layer solid color, select the pink shade, click OK and set the layer to soft light blending mode and reduce the opacity volume. Next, I see that the skin color on the reference is more yellow. It's like a mustard color. The skin tone on our photo looks lighter and less yellow. Let's try to darken the skin so that the result is similar to the reference. To do this, I go back to the selective color layer and work with the yellow color. As you can see, the yellow shade is more pronounced on the skin and that works for us. Next, I would like to work on the details and change the shade of the lips a little bit. I want to make this shade a little bit lighter and warmer because the reference pink shade is warmer than in our photo. To do this, I create a new layer solid color. I take a light pinkish shade. I set the blending mode to soft light, select the mask, press Command I, and with the white 100% brush, I paint this color on the lip area. Now let's choose the final shade and adjust the brightness. I reduce the opacity volume and look at the changes. The lips are lighter and the shade has changed. I would also like to work with the shade of shadows on the eyelids. For this, we create a layer of hue saturation. We take a red shade and change its tone. I would also like to work with the magenta shade. Let's measure its tone as well. Next, we press Command I to do a mask inversion, and with the white 100% brush, we draw these changes only in the eyelid area. Lower the opacity volume, and this is what we get. Also on the reference, we can see a pronounced blush on the cheeks. I want to add this effect to our photo as well. Let's create a new layer solid color. First, choose a random pinkish shade, set the blending mode to soft light, invert the mask, and use a transparent brush to draw the blush in the cheek area. Done. See before and after. I would like to add more of the highest contrast in the black shades. I go back to the solid color panel and add a little more black on this scale. It seems to work much better that way. One last difference is that the background shade does not quite match the background shade on the reference. Let's try to work with that. I want to change it with curves. Create a new curves layer, and here I'm working with color curves to get the right shade. I think the background color now looks just like the reference, and there is only one thing left to do. We need to apply these changes to the background only, so that the model remains unchanged. To do that, I suggest you just drop this layer down here and click Create Clippy Mask. That's it, and let's run through all of the adjustments that we have made. First, we worked with the background. We changed the hue using the color tones iteration panel. Next, we worked with the curves to refine the hue of the background. Next, we added the light from the window. And next, we worked with the hue saturation panel for this area and for the clothing area. Next, we worked with the shade of blue in the denim, and we also worked with the hue in the natural colors. Let me show you the adjustments that we made. You should have everything exactly the same as mine. Next, we worked with the curves. The curves look like this, and drew a pinkish haze across the entire surface on the photo. We worked on the details of the makeup, we worked on the shade of shadow on the eyelids, and worked on the blush. Now we can merge the layers. The final touch of processing this shot is to add noise. We can see this soft noise on the reference, probably because the shot was taken on film. Plus, this photo is a bit blurry in places. I want to show you a very cool way of blurring. Create a duplicate layer. Click OK and choose Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Blur the picture and press OK. And put the picture in light and blending mode. Here we get this blurring, and some of the texture elements are still sharp. And let's lower the opacity a little bit. Looking at the before and after, as you can see, the image has got some softness and it suits us very well. Next, let's apply noise, and for this I want to create a merging layer for these two layers. To do that, we have to press Command Option Shift E at the same time, and a new layer is created. Now we are gonna press Filter, Noise, Add Noise. This is the noise we want. Click OK. And as you remember, we don't leave this noise like this. Click Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we are going to choose the right volume. I'm going to leave it at about that, and I'm going to click OK. And we are going to lower the opacity. I think that's gonna be great. Let's group these layers together and see how the image has changed. And now we can merge on the layers. Now I just see that the background is more orange, and there is a kind of pinkish tint here. So I suggest we work with the hue of red. We create a new hue saturation and work with the red hue. I'm going to move it to the left this time and lower the saturation. That's it. And I want to add more yellow-green hue for the skin. Let's create another layer of selective color and add some yellow. Here we go. Now let's merge these two layers into a group and look at the before and after result. Yes, it's even more similar now, and now we can compare the result. Let's take a look at the reference and look at our photo. I think it looks very similar. What do you think? I hope it's the same for you. If not, go back and check all the settings. All in all, this is exactly the result I expected from repeating the color correction. And now let's consolidate all the knowledge about color correction repeat. So, the first, color correction repetition is a very cool practice where you powerfully pump up your color correction skill. The second, in order for you to successfully repeat color, your photo must be shot with the same color and light as the reference. The third, we always do a color correction repeat by analyzing three things on the reference. These are the balance of light and shadow, and we use curves to try and make a similar one. Next is the shades and the primary colors, and we use the color tone saturation panel and curves to try and make it similar. And last is the shades in the light and dark areas of the photo. And with the help of selective color correction and color curves, we try to achieve the same shades in the light and dark areas in our photo. The end result is this. So we added that as well. This is the result we got. Looks great. In the end, let's see what the picture looked like before. As you can see, it's completely different from the reference, but we managed to make a similar color correction. There is one thing that confuses for me, and I know how to make this color correction even better. I'm confused by the color of the denim. I want to work with it some more. Yeah, that's it, I'm insatiable. I want to work with the selective color panel and change the shade of blue. I don't like the green shade that came up in this part, and I'm going to try and change it. I would like to add some blue. Yeah, I think that would be much better. Let's see what other options there are for working with this color, right? And let's see what we can do with the color blue. Looking at the before and after, yeah, I think I like it a lot better this way. That's it, leave it like that and don't touch anything else. Now I can solemnly declare that you know everything about retouching and color. Plus you have learned how to do any color correction you want and how to replicate that color from references. And that's just great. Now you don't need any presets at all, you don't need to be limited to a color correction method where you just do something somehow by eye. Now you can implement any color from your head into reality. As a finally, I want to say a few words about preservation. Often, many people are concerned about this question, and many people think that they need to save photos in some special way to make them look good on the internet. Actually, I never save photos in any special way. I just click File, Save a copy, and depending on what format I need, I save the picture. If I need JPEG and it's a finished picture which I will use to put somewhere, I just choose JPEG. But if I need to print a photo or I want to work with it further, or I send it to a magazine or for advertising to the customer and so on, I would better choose PSD format or TIFF. as it is a working format which preserves the quality and, if necessary, all the layers that are not combined. But sometimes for some sites we need to reduce the size of the photo, and I recommend to do it through these settings. Go into image size, and here we need to change the resolution from 300 to 72 and click OK. The image is downsized and it's ready to be saved, or else we cannot reduce it and just click on File, Export, Save for Web. It opens a window of settings for saving, and here we can choose the format. We choose JPEG, and here we choose the size we need and click Save.